when they were first boated, I boated them for Brit Champs, and right up to the start, they were warming up, and they weren't even in time, and it looked awful. And I said that was the best quad I had that day. Then all of a sudden at 1,000 meters, they just changed speed, and they slotted into a rhythm that I'd never seen them row. I hadn't taught them that rhythm. They started to move. They started to catch up the GB senior quad. They rode away from the field. And at the end of the race, people were like, wow, what was that? And that's when that quad started. It didn't start when I selected them for that race. It didn't start because I did anything special. I gave them the opportunity to do something. They then did it. And after that race, they felt they were unbeatable. That was the start of them gaining confidence. Every time we raced and competed and achieved something that we set we were going to achieve, like a time or win a race, it just built and built and built.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Last Stroke Counts. Today is episode 51, and I'm very pleased to say that we have the Chief Women's Coach of Leander Club, Ross Hunter. Ross, or Rossi as I call you, please welcome to the show.
Great, thanks. I'm really happy to be here, guys. Happy to work with you for a bit today.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thanks for coming on. Obviously, back at the club, I wore my Leander shirt.
I'm loving it. I should have put something on myself.
Oh, we all know where you're from. There's loads to talk about on this one. I think you're another great ambassador for the sport and just like being on the water in general. I think from what I know about you, whether you got into coaching rowing, like you've just always been around the river, and I think that's kind of an interesting thing. Again, we've said it before, but like rowing is not a sport; it's a lifestyle, and I think you have made the river your life. So I think there'll be loads of interesting things to get into.
Yeah, just a quick announcement before we get into the show. A couple of people have asked us how they could support the podcast. So we've set up 2 different ways that you can do that. You can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/laststrokecounts. Or if you'd like to support us regularly, we've also set up a Patreon where you can also get some bonuses and perks. Just check out patreon.com/laststrokecounts.
We do drink a lot of coffee.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, and we don't make any money doing this. We like doing it. People like seeing it. So the aim is like if we can kind of reach a bit further, maybe get a bit of money to go into Europe, like we were sort of saying. We speak to some people around there. That would be awesome. It'd be cool if you want to send us something. If you don't, no worries.
Awesome.
That's it. Let's get into it. So how we normally start is how you got into rowing in the first place.
Okay, so I was lucky enough to have a family that rowed. My dad was a coach at the local rowing club, and I say local rowing club, it was probably about an hour's drive from our house, so not that local. My brother took up the sport early as well, so he was rowing and coxing probably from about 11 years old. So if I wanted to spend time with my brother and my dad at weekends, I went to the rowing club, and I just got into the sport. I started off coxing at my old rowing club, Poplar Blackburn District Rowing Club. Cox for a couple of years, hated every minute of it because it was just so boring, and I wasn't a good cox. It wasn't very fulfilling. Then I started to do a bit of rowing on the side where the guys that I coxed would take me out for a little session here and there. Got into the sport a little bit more through going out in a single, and then just started building up from there. So a family sport for me. Really enjoyed the rowing side of it, and the atmosphere at the rowing club was always really exciting. I was the youngest kid there. Most of them were, my brother was the next youngest. He'd have been 3 years older than me. And then it was a bunch of adults. So I got to spend time with 20 to 30 year olds who were cool and grown up and talking about things that my friends didn't talk about at school. So if I went rowing at the club and I was respected as an athlete, which I started getting a bit as I got better, then I was hanging out with people much cooler than my friends. And that was a really nice thing. And then when I started to win races, that's when I started realizing that I was actually pretty good at it, because at my club there were no other juniors apart from my brother, who was really good. So I didn't know I was any good until I went to my first race, and I think I won it by 30 seconds.
Wow.
But it was a head race. But then I realized that kids my age trained at clubs where other juniors were, so they compared themselves against juniors.
Yeah.
Whereas at my club, when I went out to do a training piece, I was racing grown men. So beating them took a lot. And that's when I realized I was probably okay at it. I was not very good at other sports. I tried a lot of them, but didn't really find that they were for me. And because my brother was so good, I always thought that it must be a family thing. It must be in my genes. And I worked out later on that rowing is what you put in, you get out, and no one's born into it, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I started rowing probably about 9 or 10 as a cox, and then probably 11 or 12 I started sculling. and then basically took it on to being a junior at my club. And then when I was about 17, 18, I came to Leander Club and joined the junior program here. There wasn't many juniors, but it was a decent squad of people that I rode with on and off in sort of junior training and things like that. We raced Henley Royal and we won the Fawley, which was a fantastic experience. My brother had won it twice before. My dad had coached a couple of people that had won it. So I always thought that was like the thing to do. And then that same year I went to Junior Worlds and I won a gold medal in the Coxhaul.
Nice.
And after that, I didn't think I would carry on rowing because I didn't think people did after juniors, because I didn't know anyone who really had. But when I'd been successful, I thought that, oh, I could do this. And then I realized I was a very small heavyweight. So going lightweight was probably the option. And I went lightweight for the next couple of years for under 23s. Struggled at first, actually. Didn't really find it as natural as I thought I would, because I thought my height, lightweight rowing would be perfect. But actually, I didn't realize that lightweights were very good at rowing as well, and I lost the weight but probably didn't hold my standard as well. Did under 23s a couple of times. I came fourth in the lightweight 4, got a bronze medal in the lightweight pair. That same year I went to the Senior Worlds as the spare, which was great fun. Loved that, being with the seniors. I didn't have to do any racing, just got to hang out with the seniors on camp and train. That was lovely, and that was in Milan. And that year was my brother was in the team as well, so he was a senior athlete and I was the spare. So that was a really nice experience. Came back from that, thought that I was on the pathway to going to the Olympics, and then spent, I think, 3 years just missing out on making the senior team, and that was a bit of a shock. And then I went to the next World Championships, was 2006. I went to in the lightweight quad and we came fourth. Missed out on a bronze medal by 0.2 of a second, which was really disappointing. And I remember thinking after that race, actually, someone asked me if I was disappointed with the result, and I said, I am, but I'm more disappointed with myself, because I know this year I could have done 0.2 of a second more myself. And everyone always thinks that you should look at the crew and go, oh, we didn't do this well, we didn't do that well. But if you were individually better, it wouldn't have mattered. So I took that on the chin and thought, have I done everything I could this year to win? I hadn't. I'd been lazy. I'd missed sessions. So I felt that was the biggest lesson to me, was I could have had the impact for 3 other people in my crew plus me had I done more. But afterwards, it's too late to decide that was the case. So next year, do more. And then I had a couple of minor injuries that put me out. And the next time I went to a World Championships was 2009. So a big break between World Championships. And that was in the lightweight pair. Came 5th there, which was a fair result. I think that was where we were. I don't think there was anything wrong with that. We weren't medal standard, but it was a new lightweight team that year. And we got the best result out of the team for the lightweights.
Sure.
And then after that, I wasn't put on funding and I wasn't asked to train at Caversham full time. And that was kind of a bit of a sign to me that I wasn't on track and that they weren't really interested in me. So I kept rowing and I enjoyed it. And I did it alongside my job for a few years at the club, at Leander Club. I loved it. I always loved the sport. Being paid for it would have been a bonus, not something I expected. And going to World Championships was a bonus and a treat. It was never something that I thought I was entitled to. And if I wasn't good enough to go to the Olympics, which I wasn't, that's on me. I had all the opportunities to be better, and maybe I didn't take them. So I wouldn't say it was a successful rowing career. It was a good rowing career. I enjoyed it. I had some great friends and I loved it. And I loved being part of Leander Club, and I loved being part of the process. And people I rowed with went on to bigger and better things. And I like to think that at some small part, I helped that. But I wouldn't say a successful rowing career. I would say I rowed and I did okay.
Henley Fawley winner.
Twice.
Junior gold medalist. Under 23 medalist.
Yeah.
Senior medalist.
Yeah.
Not a successful
Not a senior medalist. Not a senior medalist, no.
Oh, sorry. What did you say in the pair? Fourth?
And I was 5th in the pair.
Right, 0.2 of a second off of being a senior medalist. What are you talking about,
so
Rossi?
that's not an unsuccessful career.
No.
That's very successful. That's
My brother's an Olympic gold medalist. I think that would be that I could never have done that. But I think when you're around people that succeed, and I got what I deserved because I didn't do enough. But that was on me. No one ever told me to train less hard or do less sessions. I think I could have had better instruction early on about what I was missing. I don't think anyone was as honest as they should have been.
So is it possible that you're saying that you didn't have too successful of a career because you understand like what your potential was and how far of that potential you possibly have achieved? That doesn't mean that your achievements are not worth calling successful or anything.
I love it that you guys are taking that side of it, and I would love to believe that myself. So I got rowing. I understood what moved a boat. I really, really got rowing. Like the subtleties of moving a boat and how to do it, I was really good at.
I used to watch you in a single on those Saturday morning time trials.
Yeah.
2008, I was this little 19-year-old kid. I could never scull. I was shitting my pants, trying not to come last again. This guy just like so cool, just chilling, laughing, messing about down the bottom end, just having a bloody laugh. All the heavyweights giving it the chat, and then every week he just fucking turned the burners on and smash everyone.
I mean, I've been coached and supervised by quite a few like people here at Leander, but it wasn't until like Rossi took me like down to the side after some sessions, and took a video of me and started like going through like some video analysis with me about like movements, like that certain things clicked in my head, and like then just really sped up like the progress which I was able to improve. So I mean, I can absolutely attest to that. Like rowing.
Yeah, so therefore the fact that I wasn't more successful, I think, is down to my lack of work ethic or my lack of professionalism. I just took it all for granted because it was so easy to get in a boat and row it. There was a football player, one of the greats, who said, I never understood why people found it so hard to just kick a ball. And I felt that with rowing. I never thought rowing was hard, and it made me a bit arrogant, and it probably made me overconfident that rowing a boat was just so easy to me. It came so naturally that I thought that was enough, but it's not enough.
But is that a fair measure on like a 20-something-year-old in terms of maturity and that sort of thing, like understanding those sorts of things? Don't you need to like go through a process to learn them?
Yeah, I think you do have to go through a process, but some people, they figure out, like my brother is naturally very everything that I can do in a boat, he can do better.
Yeah.
But his work ethic and his attention to detail and things like that is just so much better than mine. And we grew up in the same house with the same parents and with the same opportunities. He made the most of everything. I made the most of it without having to work hard. And then when it got to a point where it was a bit hard, I probably then just sat on the fence a little bit. So yeah, I don't think it's a negative that I didn't think I had a successful rowing career. I accept it. I own it. It was my rowing career, and I have no regrets about how I did it because I enjoyed every minute of it and I loved it. But I do think had I had a time again, then potentially if I could give myself some advice, it would be like just address a few things. But I'm not sure, knowing my young self, if I'd have listened anyway.
Yeah.
But I don't think coaches back then were as professional as they are now.
Sure.
And I'm sure had I had someone who was really on top of me all the time to make sure I did those things, I maybe could have done better. But who knows? Maybe I actually would have got the same results, and I'd have been sitting going, I tried everything and I still didn't get anywhere. Maybe I'm better off in my sort of denial of like, well, I could have got further maybe if I'd have done a bit more.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, I think, what's they say about 30,000 people around the UK? I think there's 29,500 people who would love to have the career you had. So I know you're comparing yourself to Olympic champions, and I've done the same thing. All the guys I came up with, a lot of them went to Olympics. I didn't. It's difficult when you've got that. Did you feel any pressure like coming from a rowing family with Mark being so good and your dad and stuff? Was that difficult?
I think I felt that I definitely felt at points I'd let them down, but only because, and people who know my family will understand this, we are so close. Mark and dad and mum, we are really, really tight. And everything I could have ever needed to be good, I was given. I remember when I won Junior Worlds, my brother was the first person to ring me up, and he was almost in tears down the phone. You're like, he was so happy for me, more happy because it hadn't really settled in for me yet. I'd got my medal and I got my hotel, but I hadn't really accepted what had happened. But he was just so happy, and he drove to the airport to pick me up because he wanted to be the first person to see me off the plane and stuff like that. And my mum and dad were just, they were over the moon, and every part of our rowing careers, they've been so supportive of. If I ever felt that I'd shortchanged that family investment, financially, obviously, because it's expensive sport, but in terms of time and in terms of support, sometimes I felt I'd probably not delivered on my part, which was doing as well as I could. But yeah, it was not pressure from them. I think pressure from myself to not feel like they hadn't, their time had been worth putting in, because they put in a lot of time.
Yeah, I used to hate, when they've come to watch it at regatta and they've driven 3 hours to get to Dorney, and then they've sat on the bank in the rain all day, and then they get to see you for 5 minutes, then you've got to run off and dereg. It can be quite difficult. It completely put my brother off rowing. He started rowing at school. I was not fantastic at school, but there's a small rowing school, so I rose to the top of that school quite quick, and he just got completely fed up of being told, you could be good like Tom's really good, you could be good. Shut up, I'm not interested in this anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it's a difficult
Also, like
Can be difficult.
Yeah. Also, if you would have gotten everything that you wanted in terms of like your athletic career, right? Would you have stayed on as long as you did as a coach and guided so many people to success? You know.
Maybe not actually. I do find it interesting now when I talk to athletes how they perceive the sport, because for me it was just a pleasure. I loved it. I really loved the sport. I still love it now. But when I was an athlete, I always knew how lucky I was to be doing the thing I loved the most and doing it as almost like my first profession. And obviously I had a career on the side, but I think some of the athletes I'm not sure they do, either they don't realize they love it as much as they do, or they actually don't love it and they don't see it as a passion. They see it as a kind of, this is how I'm going to get an Olympic gold medal, or this is how I'm going to be an international athlete. I never felt like that. It was never, if someone had said to me, you can be an elite sportsman in any sport, I would have chosen rowing, not because I thought I was going to earn money out of it, but it's what I love to do. And doing something I didn't love to do for more money or more success would not have meant anything to me compared to that. So I do find it funny, the younger generation now, they talk about retiring before they've actually achieved anything. That, oh, I'm only going to do this Olympic cycle. And you're like, well, you haven't done anything in this Olympic cycle yet. And you're already talking about stopping. I don't think the passion for the sport is there.
Yeah.
And that could be, the systems in place and the coaches and the regime and things like that. But I think fundamentally, that maybe early on in their sport, the joy wasn't given to them.
Yeah.
Junior rowing is way more intense than it has ever been. There are paid professionals, and there always has been, but there are paid professionals whose job it is to win over maybe making their athletes row better or enjoy the sport more. And that pressure on young kids is only going to go one way. You might get a few more medals, but I think you're going to get more kids who don't love the sport and who do stop early and who fall out of love with it before they've even had a chance to really experience it. So I do think, going back to your question about if I'd have been more successful, I'd like to think I'd still been involved in the sport at some place, whether I'd have been, more active in social rowing as an older, maybe as a veteran, or been a part-time coach or whatever. But I'd never planned to be a coach anyway. I kind of fell into it. But I do think, because I still love the sport and I still enjoy the sport, and if rowing's on TV, I watch it. I just drawn to it.
Yeah.
If I see people out rowing, I always stop and look just to see how they're moving, and it is my sport. So I think I've always been involved, but probably not. Maybe had I been more successful, maybe I would have been burnt out a bit more.
Sure.
From the success or whatever, and then maybe I wouldn't have gone into coaching full time.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit less hungry also, to stay involved.
When we spoke with Tim Foster, he was sort of saying how many Olympic gold medalists coach people to Olympic gold medals. It seems to be almost like a different path. If that's where yours ended, it kind of, maybe what it takes to get there, like you said, means that you sort of need a break from it. But we said again before we started, there's like a separation between people who find the sport and love doing the sport, and then the people that continue to go on and coach and enjoy teaching other people how to do it. And like, we've both done a bit of it. And like you said, it's a sport we fall in love with. It's amazing to watch someone fall in love with it. Like, it's amazing to watch someone get that bug, oh, do you reckon we could do another ergo this week? Like, yes, I've got him. You're in.
It's something I've never said to me. No, I think that is, I do appreciate how lucky I am, not only that my career is the thing I love, but also to work in a club that I actually have a big attachment to. And I know not everyone has that attachment to any club, so working anywhere, and it doesn't mean you have to work for the club that you rowed at, but I am passionate about the athletes that I work with, and I'm really passionate about Leander being a successful environment for those athletes. So it just makes coming to work a pleasure, and it is a joy. I think it's hard for some of my friends who don't have jobs that they love to understand why I do extra time, or I do the little things that probably I don't need to do, but it's just that's how it is, and it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah, you want to go the extra mile. There's like an incentive because you just enjoy what you're doing. There's not a dread. You're not looking at time and wanting to go home and like, oh, I wonder when my next holiday is. Like, so many people, like myself, I found that in a corporate career, like after rowing, like just literally looking forward to the next day off in 3 weeks' time, and then those sorts of things.
They plan their holidays. You're like, I don't need a holiday. I love my job, and like, it's exciting, and there's races and events that feel like these big moments, and there's such a rush, and I think there's such a sense of fulfillment at the end of each season, or each part of the season that you've aimed towards. You don't feel like you need this big break from it. And when I started off coaching, I would be like coming down in my holiday to just make sure the club was okay and check all the boats were okay. And people were like, you don't need to do this. I'm like, I know, but like, what? I want to be back at work, and I've got to wait 3 more weeks because the athletes are having their break. So what is there to do?
All in, yeah. I mean, it's rare to be able to work in such a environment where everyone's 100% in. And we've talked to a lot of people post their own career about how they've struggled with that, being, like you said, in the workplace and not having that. So go on then. How did you accidentally fall into coaching? When you hung up the oar, were you like, that's it? I've got other stuff I'm going to do on the water.
If you see me next to the boat, shoot me.
Yeah.
I talked to someone about this the other day, and they were like, "Oh, when did you retire?" And I went, "I didn't retire. I didn't have enough of a career to retire."
I find that funny now.
I just slid out of it a little bit casually, like kind of just did a little bit less until I just didn't want to go rowing the next day. And then I thought, oh no, so I don't think I ever retired.
No Instagram.
No,
yeah.
like I imagine like post it online. I finally decided to retire, and people are like, who cares? So that affects no one. So I'd always done a bit of coaching on the side just to help out, and I really enjoyed it. And I even felt towards the end of my career when I was in crew boats with people that were younger, I was in there to actually help them row better rather than perform myself. So I was like from the bow seat coaching or trying to guide some of the younger athletes who have gone on to do great things.
I mean, just to mention, you were like when I came up, you've been like John O'Clegg, Davy Jones. Name some of the others, guys who've gone on and did cool stuff.
Yeah, and like that's great. Like I said, I think being part of other people's journey is part of a rowing career. And if you only are in it for yourself, it's pretty dire to think that that's your end of your experience has been just you and you alone. If you can have a positive impact on the people around you, it's a much nicer, richer experience for you.
Yeah.
Because whether you succeed or not, you're part of other people's success.
Yeah.
And that, again, that's probably what coaching is like. So I really enjoyed that part of it. And when I did finally stop rowing every day, I was always doing a bit of coaching at schools and places like that to just help out a little bit. And then a friend of mine, Nick Quirk, I was at his house for a party, and he'd just been given the job as, I think, the head coach at UE, so University of West of England. And he said, I need some help. I've got to figure out how to run the women's program. They've had a tough time of it. Would you come in and do some part-time coaching? And I said, what does part-time look like? And he said, 15 hours a week, but in Bristol. So I said, yeah, do you know what? Let's have a chat. And I went up to visit the program, and I chatted to his boss, and we said, oh yeah, I'll do it for a year and just see how it is. I had a flexible job at the time. So I had time to spare. And I started doing this job, and it turned into 40 hours a week.
Shit.
And we started off with maybe like a handful of athletes, and we ended up with like 40 or 50 by the end of the first year. I loved it. I loved helping the people to understand the sport that I loved, but I also like to learn, because although I knew the sport from being in the boat, learning it from the bank side was a whole new experience for me. And I got to learn it with people who didn't know any better. So when I made mistakes, they didn't know, which was nice because I didn't feel under the pressure of what I knew was enough for them. But it taught me how to problem solve, how to manage big squads. We had one women's 8 and one women's 4 for 40 athletes, and I'm trying to figure out who can row, what session, who has that break, you go in at this day, and structure it all. So they're not, because if they just stood around for hours waiting for me to do my job, they wouldn't turn up the next day. So you had to have it slick, and you had to run it well. And they were brilliant. Like some of the some of my best coaching experiences came from that year and the second year at UE. And I loved it. And they won some great stuff. They won a few Bucks medals. They qualified for Henley Royal, and it was amazing stuff for them. And they had this big race called the Varsity Race. And the second year I was there, they won that for the first time in like 8 years, and they loved it. And I love being part of that. But it probably, we talked about this before, the athlete investment at a university like that wasn't the same as I wanted to give. And I was always trying to do more and not always being met by most of the athletes. Some of them were great, but most of the athletes. And it then became frustrating that I was thinking I was putting so much in and not getting them to put in the same amount. Yeah. So I think you want to meet your coach halfway, you want to basically put in an equal partnership. So at that point, Mark Banks asked me to come and have a chat. And he said, look, I've seen you do some coaching. I think it looks quite good. Can you talk to me about rowing a little bit? And I want to know how you view it. Now you're not an athlete. So I discussed to him kind of how I saw the sport and how I saw rowing in the boat and what we were trying to work on. And he seemed to like it. He seemed to think it was on the right path. and he invited me to come and be a part-time coach at Leander. So my second year at UE, not only was I doing the 40 hours a week at UE and driving backwards and forwards, I was then doing equivalent like 30 hours a week at Leander, doing 7 days a week, driving forwards and backwards from Henley to Bristol to do the job, coaching the development athletes here and the women at UE. And that was, I mean, when I talk to young coaches now about what it takes to be a successful coach, I'm still learning. Okay, so I don't know. But what I know is you have to work hard, especially early on, and you cannot think that when you're sitting around other coaches who have made it and that's how they do it, that's how you should do it, because you're not them. And it's like when you're an athlete, you look at an Olympic gold medalist, training like them doesn't make you an Olympic gold medalist. You go through the stages to earn your rights to be able to be where they are. Yeah. And the same as coaching, you have to put in the graft and you've got to do the really hard work, and you've got to learn your trade so that you feel like you deserve it. You're not an imposter when you get there. Yeah. So then that second year was hard. It was 7 days a week. It was just backwards and forwards down the M4. It was, just sleeping in my car sometimes, just to have an hour's nap between going from one to the other. And it was, but I loved it. I was always busy. I was always active. And I actually started, that's when I felt that I probably wanted to be a coach. And then at the end of that second year, when I'd done both jobs, I knew I couldn't carry on at the University of West of England. It wasn't what I wanted to be doing. And Mark said, look, I want you full time. How do I make that work? And I said, well, look, I'm ready to commit to one program. And they started me off working with the lightweight men the first year. I had a small group of lightweight men. And again, I've been so lucky that every job I've taken, I've had amazing groups start that year. So the lightweight group started that year and they were just brilliant. They're great athletes, good fun, the right energy, the right attitude things. And then towards the end of that year, I was given the whole of the men's sculling program, so the heavyweight men and the lightweight men, and I ran it as one squad. And again, the combination of the athletes, they were brilliant. They loved each other. They got on so well. They trained as a squad and really bought into how I view squad rowing to be and the sort of things that I think are really important. And that was, I think it was the end of that year. I can't remember if it was that year or the year after, but we ended up going to the Under-23 World Championships. I think I had a squad of 10 athletes, and I think 8 of them went to the Under-23 World Championships, and 7 of them won medals. And I was just like, I love my job. That's that's what I love. Yeah. The fact that they want that, I want to help them get that. And when you get that, you go, we've done it. We've done our job this year. Next year's another challenge, but right now we can sit there for a few minutes and go, wow, we've done something really special. And then that led on, I think the next year I did the same thing, and I had people making it into the senior team and people going to under-23s, and on the way we won Henley a few times, which was great. I always enjoyed that. And then in 2017, I was asked if I would work with a women's program at Leander, and at that point there really wasn't much of a women's program. There was a lot of athletes. I think there was maybe 1 or 2. And although I was really nervous about jumping from men's sculling, which had just been so successful, not just from me. Before I got the job, Matt Beachy had won it for 8 years on the trot. So I was already working with a squad of people that they hadn't won it with him, but they'd been part of that. Leander sculling had been successful. Then when it was the women's program, it felt like something new, something I could call my own, something that I would then be judged on, which was really scary, but really exciting. And again, luckily, the first year I had these really great athletes come in, work with them, a successful season, trialists and people getting selected for stuff, and then that just led on. So year on year, that just built and built and built. So I know they say it's passion and luck combined makes success.
Sure.
I do think the passion is great. The luck is massive. If I'd have had not the athletes or not a good intake those years that I started, and I had less athletes to work with, the success would have been less, and therefore I would have been judged and more stress, and I'd have found it harder to bridge that gap to where I wanted to be. So very lucky.
I mean, I can totally agree with what you're saying, especially in terms of like you got to work hard before you can work smart. I love how people say, oh, it's all about working smart, not working hard. No, you got to earn the right to work smart. Secondly, there are so many people who get given a great pool of athletes, but they can't do anything with them, or they're not helping them achieve their best self. So I think you definitely have to give yourself some credit there along the way. Otherwise, Mark Banks wouldn't say, let's have a chat and get you to come and work at Leander. I think the fact that you've had 7 under-23s get medals in that first year of coaching?
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah,
That's insane.
Yeah. But I think it was, a lot of coaching is personality, and it doesn't mean you have to have this certain personality. You have to know your personality, and you have to know how that works. Because if you don't know who you are, and you don't know how you come across, you can't then put across what you want.
True.
So some coaches are more reserved, some coaches are really outgoing and really bubbly, and they're all good. But you have to know how to work it for your benefit. And I think that's the bit that I felt really comfortable being me, doing my job.
Isn't it a bit like, obviously, like rowing in a different boat, you have to be adaptable to the different rowing style and stuff. And the same way, you have to be different with different athletes, right? You have to like adapt to them, and then that's how you're going to like get them, become help them get the most out of themselves. Like that's what Tom always talks about.
Yeah, I mean, I always find it funny when people talk about, I was never a good doubles row, or I was never a good pairs row, I was always better in the four. I was sort of thinking, I don't know if I ever rowed differently in any other boat. I'm not sure I got to this level of like not being as good in one or the other. But with the luck thing, of course you need luck, but eventually everyone gets luck. So the difference is like making the best of it when you get it, and
are you
not
ready for
waiting. You talk about having good athletes. As coaches, there's no point this year because I haven't got any good athletes. And then a couple of years' time, all of a sudden you've got 8 good athletes, but you haven't put anything in process to deal with that. So whereas what you're doing is you've got all this stuff in the right place, and then the athletes turn up, and then, like you said, it's both together. But ultimately, I think at some point you're going to get some luck. So if you put the work in first, then the luck will come. If you wait for the luck, you'll miss it. And
you've got to be ready for it. Like you said, like those processes need to be in place, because then you need that momentum in order to just like make the most out of it. You can't be starting from scratch every single September and then expect to have great result come July, because it's like it's a long time, but it's not that much time in order to teach people like so many new habits, or like climb mountains with some athletes.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. And the luck I'm talking about, I think, is that it clicked with those people that I worked with. We had a discussion about that quad where it was Rowan, Andy, Joel, Harry Glenn.
I love that quad.
And Harry Leask, right? Now, some people look at them from the outside and see a very different crew than I saw. I saw 4 different personalities that I managed, but what I was really clear about was that I was consistent. So I would work with them in a different way to each other, depending on how they were, but the laws and the rules in place were consistent. There was no like, well, he can be late, but he can't. There was no exception of that. And I think that's where some coaches go the wrong way. They go, we've got to treat them all as individuals. And what they do is they make allowances for some and not others. And then you have a squad where everyone's got their own rules for how they have to behave. And that's not culture.
Yeah.
Culture is, these are the rules that we work by. Okay. Dealing with the individual obviously can have a little bit of kind of, management, and that's fine as long as you don't break the culture rules that you've set.
Sure.
So, and I find that when some coaches I've worked with have not understood that, and they go, oh yeah, you've got to treat this one different from that one. This one needs more. But then you're not being fair to the athletes, because this one gets more time because they need more time. But if you gave that person more time, would they not be successful? Because they don't need time because you're trying to solve life problems. They want time to be coached. And so I think trying to be fair with your time and trying to be consistent with your message, even if you have to tailor it for the individual a little bit, but not going down the route that everyone's got their own rules and regulations and it's just a free for whether you're liked or disliked. And that's where athletes think coaches like or dislike them, but how they get treated. And I find it weird because I'm like, it's not my job to like you or dislike you. My job is to teach you how to row. I'm not your friend. I'm not your social, person that you hang out with. I'm a professional coach. You're an athlete that wants to be good. It's not about like or dislike, and that should never be something that the coach has in his mind. And I don't think a lot of coaches, or I'd like to think a lot of coaches don't have that, or judging athletes on their personalities or who they think they like more. It's about what they can bring and what they consistently bring to the training environment.
Yeah.
That's important, but it's not personal.
Completely.
I always found that wild. Coaching again, you'd get accused of having favourites, or you like this person more. Well, I like them more because they turn up on time, they stretch first, they put the blades out, they give it 100%. Like, it's not because we're mates. Like, think of the you just gave that award to the person you like the most. No, I gave it to like the best rower, the one who's putting it in.
And it's not like you don't like them more, but if I'm picking a crew, I start with them because that's the person who's going to be the best rower. So you always put that person in the boat. They win everything. If I didn't put them in, you'd be like, why am I not rowing with that person who wins everything? Like, but it's not like or dislike.
Yeah.
It's easier when athletes do what they're meant to be doing. Obviously, that's easier. But sometimes difficult athletes are brilliant, and you can't not use them because they're going to make the boat win. But you have to figure out a way of trying to get them to work in that structure, so that it's not disruptive for the crew.
Yeah, so that brings me to a question in terms of treating athletes fair and under the same rules. How did you manage? How the hell did you manage Harry Lee's nutrition?
See, these are the questions that I always think someone should ask because, for those who probably don't know Harry Leesk, he is an incredibly talented, driven young person with a really, really great sense of humour and an amazing work ethic. If I said to you, he's the first person out every day on the water, and he's the person who does every mile that we set, and the quality control. And someone asked me in the national team, why did you put Harry Leesk at bow? And I went, because when Harry's at bow, the whole crew has to do the right thing because he steers them, turns them, gets them on with it. He runs the show. I could put him in other seats, and he's still good in those seats. But then somebody else is making the calls, and they're not like Harry, so they might let them take another minute to turn the boat or not be with it. Harry just kept everyone honest, which is why I wanted him at bow. Not because he was the best bow man. He was the person who sat that seat for that crew right. Another crew, he might not be at bow, but in that crew, that was why he was at bow. And I never thought positions in a boat were given out on ability as much as kind of that crew how it needed to be. So whether you're a stroke or bow doesn't mean you're the best stroke man in that crew, but the whole crew rows better because you're in that seat or that. So when people judge where they are in a boat, or coaches go, well, why is someone a bow? And you think, I don't put them there because they're not as good as the others. I put them there because that job is done better by them in this crew. So Harry Leesk, he was a fantastic athlete, amazing athlete, Olympic silver medalist now, but he's always had an interesting diet. So he doesn't really eat fruit or vegetables, and he doesn't like anything off the norm, and he definitely doesn't follow the lines of a nutritional diet that an athlete would follow. And I went into his room at one of the World Championships, and by his bed was just bottles of Coke and chocolate that he'd been given before his flight. So I think he had 3 bottles of those massive Cokes like that, and he had like 7 or 8 chocolate bars of dairy milk. And that was what he was eating, when he wasn't having the main meals downstairs. But even when he had the main meals downstairs, he'd only have like plain pasta or something really, really basic. But I was always getting a hard time by coaches who were working with us about that. And I took the view that, if I was in complete control of someone, I probably wouldn't advise him to eat that. But that's what he was comfortable with, and that's what he knew, and that's what he trusted. And if I'm going to change someone's diet completely, they've got to buy into it. I can't make them do anything. Yeah. So making it lighthearted and giving a bit of advice and trying to encourage him to do some things better was how I did it. And then I trusted that this is who he is. And it's not my job to change who he is. My job is to get the best out of who he is. Yeah. So that's how he eats, and this is how he performs, and the performances are where they need to be. As long as he's happy with it, I need to just be a sort of a bit of an encouraging figure to try and say, look, might be nice to have a little bit of this or a little bit of that, but definitely not get on his back every day about it, and not make him feel like he can't succeed because of that. Because you can succeed doing loads of different things in a different way, as long as you believe it's right and your people around you support you. But if someone tells you you're going to fail every day because of what you're doing, because they don't like what you're doing, that's not going to get him anywhere. The same was true for Andy Joel. I think halfway through our second year working together, he decided to go vegan.
Yeah, he was one of the first people.
Yeah, so and I didn't really understand what vegan was at the time, and I tried to do a bit of research, and I tried to say, look, are you doing these things you need to do to get in the right... But other people were like, oh, you've got to get on his back. Because early on, no one had gone vegan that much in the sport. And the coaches that I knew were trying to get me on his back to almost make him stop it. And I was like, this is just not how you work with athletes. That's not how... That they felt like that coaching was a control mechanism over athletes. Like, you're the coach, you can control them. I don't believe that's the case. I think we're a partnership and we work together. And the same as you wouldn't want someone in your team telling you what to do all the time. My job is to help if I can, support, yes, add options, yes, but definitely not to dominate and to dictate. So I basically, in a nutshell, let Harry Leesk be Harry Leesk and try to help him a little bit to bridge the gap between what was his diet and maybe a slightly better diet. But I don't think, even when he won his Olympic silver medal, I don't think he changed that much. But the main thing is I didn't make him feel like he couldn't succeed if he didn't do these things, because that would have been me not doing my job. My job is to make an athlete believe they can succeed. And if that's the way they do it, that's the way they do it.
And then you don't want to antagonize, especially someone who's got such incredible talent like Harry Leesk. Like, what? He put a few lengths on Mahe Drysdale in one of the World Cups when he was still rowing. He's incredible.
Yeah, look, and he's phenomenal, but he's phenomenal because he believes in who he is and he trusts that he is that person who can do those things. So you've got to be careful that what you're doing isn't to take away their confidence, because confidence is hard earned. It really is.
Oh, yeah.
Most athletes They aren't confident. Most of them don't even know they're not confident. They're just not confident. But they haven't earned the right to be confident. So that's fine. You just need to encourage them and give them enough opportunities that they can earn the right to be confident by being successful and ticking things and then saying to them, look, write down on a bit of paper what you've achieved this year, this month, this week. That will give them confidence. But if you keep knocking them back to fit into what my mold of rowing is or my mold of what an athlete is, that's not going to give them confidence. That's probably going to make them doubt themselves. So, and it's not my journey. I'm a facilitator. It's their journey. So Harry Leese has been more successful than I ever was. My diet was pretty crap. His was way worse than mine ever was, but he's been more successful. So, who am I to judge? Yeah. I know other coaches were very, very judgmental. And actually, if they'd have worked with him, I don't know if he'd have got, I'm not saying he got where he was because of me, but I don't think other coaches would have been able to manage him as well in some of those early stages had they tried to change him too much.
Yeah,
completely.
I think that's a really good point. You've got to keep communication open, because if you go in too hard, you'll shut it down. And you haven't stopped him eating his diet. He's just not telling you about it anymore. Yeah. And it'll just go into hiding, sort of thing. Like we're not completely. I'm saying for anything, not to have a go at Harry if you're listening. Okay, yeah, you got the medal, so it worked for you. And I think that's an important point. It's like, I remember we spoke to Ben Welburn. I think this is something with newer coaches I'm starting to see a bit more, is just coaching what's in front of you. A good example with Ben was 1 year with Hereford School. They were rowing sort of a bit short, a bit upright, and someone mentioned, that's like the Hereford way, and it's like, no, it's just like these kids are quite new to sport. They don't have like the strength or whatever at the front end. We'll just keep it a bit short. We'll keep it in that range. Like, we'll row the way we need to row with these kids to make this boat go fast, which is what you spoke about. But there's so many other people who are like, this is how it's done, fit that mold. And then there's so many other problems, it's injuries and things like that. So yeah, no, I think that's good to hear. And
you look at the World Championships now, there are more than one ways to do it.
Oh yeah.
Technical model, training model, race profiles. There are some big changes in the sport, especially in the last maybe 2 or 3 Olympic cycles, of a much bigger wealth of knowledge, rather than it being, this is the way, 20 years ago, this is the way you had to row to achieve things. It's become way more spread. And what you're seeing now is on the medal rostrum, you are seeing a much bigger range of athletes with medals around their necks. It used to be carbon copies of each other, same sort of height, same sort of weight. Now there's a big range. You're getting much taller, leaner athletes. You're getting some shorter ones. You're getting medium range, but quite muscular, because they've all figured out, like you said, what moves the boat for them. And once you get that right, you can go fast. But if you keep trying to follow somebody else's design, it's sometimes fool's errand. You keep running around in circles trying to figure out why it's not working for you, but it works for them because they're them.
Yeah. It comes down to consistency of like buying into a system and then just like figuring out how to get to level 10 in your own way, rather than being at level 4 of someone else's way. By an example, yeah, totally.
I think the confidence thing is really interesting, like the way you put that as well. I think I sort of sometimes talked before about having to understand when you're dealing with like certainly high performance athletes, you're probably dealing with people who are the most self-critical. If they've got themselves to this point, like they are going to beat the crap out of themselves. Yeah. Like I never generally like whatever any coach says about me, doesn't care, because like, this voice is like ripping me to shreds. And like I said, confidence is difficult to get, very hard earned, easily lost. And I think that's a really important point, like to just think about, if you find an athlete with it, like let's just like take a step back and see, what is it that's going into that, and like what could I do to not mess that up or build that up? I mean, what would be your point in trying to help athletes who don't have it as well?
I think, especially working with the women. Okay, so the women as a group, and I'm not saying this is all women. I'm not saying this is even all women in rowing. It's just the squad that I currently work with. They're always pretty hard on themselves, even when they do really, really good things. Some stuff the best they've ever done. They'll get a PB and criticize how they did it, or that it wasn't better. And I'm like, you've got to take a moment to pat yourself on the back and say, that was a good job today. Like, that was job well done. And I think some coaches don't do that enough. So I'm quite reserved with my my praise day to day, unless I think it's worth praising. I don't throw it around. Some coaches do. They think it's great to celebrate everything that you do and praise it and say how great it is. I'm not like that, but when it is good, I like to say it. And I think if you don't say it too often, it means more.
Yeah.
But it's trying to make sure the athletes, first of all, they have opportunities, that you lay it out and you do it in discussions with them. Say, look, these are the opportunities coming up to perform. And these are the things that I think would be a good performance at this level or this standard. And then they can go, right, so these are the 3 things coming up that I've got a chance to do well at. Not just rolling in and out of things, but actually saying, right, that's the target, that's the target, that's the target. Let's try hard for these things. Let's see if we can succeed, and what success looks like might be different for the squad. But then to review and go, look, you did a really good job for you then. Like, you're not the best in this squad, but this squad's really good. But for you, that's the best you've ever been. You're higher up the rankers than normal. You're getting closer to what your goal is that we set at the start of the season. And I think that does build confidence over, but you can't do it quickly. You can't rush it. You can't do one thing and say you're brilliant now. That makes you confident. If it comes quickly, it will go quickly. You've got to build it up, and it's got to be robust, and it's got to be them that's confident, not you telling them that they need to be confident. And I do think it's setting manageable targets. It's having a chance to achieve those. So if I keep training them through everything we do and they never get fresh, then nothing they do will ever be good. But I can't make them fresh for every target. So we go, these are the ones we're going to wind down a little bit for, and you go for, get a good score. Let's look at the information. Let's break it down and look at it as a percent, and let's look at it compared to the squad and compared to our squad averages. So give them loads of ways of looking at the data so they can see how good it is. And then doing that multiple times over a season, I think eventually you start getting this natural confidence in what we do and how we do it. And I think that's great. And like easy things to do are to measure things like S&C and ergos, because they're so straight line. You can go measure this, measure that. On the water, more difficult, and especially if you're comparing against other crews, because if they go bad one day and you beat them by more, but you can still go, well, are we videoing our crew? Telemetry is great for that. Are we actually improving our technical model? So I think you just got to make them understand what the opportunities are to be successful, and then to make sure that when they are, you tell them that was really, really good. I think that will be helpful, but ultimately it's the athlete's job to learn and to gain confidence, the same as a kid does at school. They work hard, they achieve things, they get better, or they get more confident with speaking or spelling or writing. So you have to practice those things, and then you have to give them a chance to actually mark it and say, that was good, let's now step on from there. So it's not an easy fix. I'm not saying I know all the ways to do it, but in the way that we do it at the club and the way that I do it with my athletes is like that. We plan, we structure, we review, and then hopefully we build on each time, and that just builds it over the course of a season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons. That quad was the same. When they were first voted, I voted them for Brit Champs, and right up to the start, I was with another coach, I won't say who it was, and they went, what is that quad? They were warming up and they weren't even in time, and it looked awful. And I said that was the best quad I had that day. And then they raced the race, and up until 1,000 meters, they were in the pack. And the British quad, which is also Leander, were 2 lengths ahead. And then all of a sudden at 1,000 meters, which I said, 1,000 meters, you're going to go for home because we're not going to wait. They just changed speed, and they slotted into a rhythm that I'd never seen them row. I hadn't taught them that rhythm. They started to move. They started to catch up the GB senior quad. They rode away from the field. And at the end of the race, people were like, wow, what was that? And that's when that quad started. It didn't start when I selected them for that race. It didn't start because I did anything special. I gave them the opportunity to do something. They then did it. And after that race, they felt they were unbeatable. That was the start of them gaining confidence. Every time we raced and competed and achieved something that we set we were going to achieve, like a time or win a race, it just built and built and built. I think 2 years later, they won the Queen Mother. And
maybe that was the same year even.
Yeah, maybe even. Yeah. So I think that's when you go, wow, it's amazing how they did that. I didn't do it. I gave them maybe the opportunities, but they had to win those races or achieve those things and then build their confidence in each other and the squad and how they run it. So that was, a prime example of me being a facilitator of their experience, but them living it, and their confidence wasn't given to them by me. It was given to them by themselves. Yeah. And I was just lucky enough to be along for the ride and be like, this is a great thing we're doing.
Sure thing. In terms of building confidence, you've essentially described the framework that I nicked from someone, which is competence leads to accomplishments, which then leads to confidence.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I didn't know it that way because I've not studied things like that. But
I've just heard it from someone.
That sounds good to me. We'll go with that. That's what I'm going to go with as well. Then.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, I'm sort of hearing like just authenticity as a coach. I think they said, again, something Ben talked about in terms of athletes. Good people make good athletes, and I think the same for being coach. Like, be honest when you can be. I mean, we had Dave Bow said that when he came back to Leander, people at Moz had been blowing smoke up his ass for too long, and
Shep's asking about you.
This is how it is, and he was like very glad to have that. And I think, like you said, consistency, authenticity, like credit where credit's due, but you can't force confidence into a person. I think that's really interesting. Also, when we spoke to Paddy, he said, I don't know what study from, but they'd done some sort of study or looked at a study where statistically women on the whole are far more likely after big achievements to forget about it, to push themselves back down and forget that they were capable or had done it. Obviously, there are outliers, but yeah, on the whole, it's sort of interesting. That's your same experience.
Yeah, what he said is essentially that men, once they've achieved something, they're as good as that for the rest of their life. And women, after achieving something big, they will convince themselves that somehow they're not that good anymore, and that was just a fluke.
I think the psychology of an athlete, anyway, is off the charts compared to what normal people are.
Yeah.
But I think men and women we are different. Okay, this is why there are two categories, men and women. It's not, we don't all race each other, but not just different physically, but different in how we live our lives and how we, rationalize things. And, everyone has emotions, but maybe women are more in tune with that at a quicker level, and maybe men sink them a little bit deeper and don't deal with them as much. So it's not emotional, not emotional. It's just levels of it. And I think, especially with confidence and in especially women's sport, at a young age, women are leaving sport. That's just a fact they've got. By the time they get to 12 or 13, women are at school level turning away from the sport a little bit. Whereas for men, I think that's probably not the case. I think most young men do sport at school, or a bigger proportion stay in the sport. And women are always less likely to stay in the sport as they go through, puberty and onwards and into university level. So I think that confidence, an 11, 12-year-old girl who's brilliant at sport, at school, cross country, whatever it is, keeping her in the sport's much more of a challenge than it is for a boy who was that successful. And this is something we're dealing with in rowing all the time. It's how do we keep good athletes involved in our sport, and what is turning them away? And school level, I think, is it too much? It's too much training, or is it the culture of the sport? But it is important to understand that they're not the same. So when I went working I started with women, went to men, and went back to women, I changed how I coached by realizing what was successful for them and not. And I give more of myself as a person to the women than I did with the men. Okay, so I talk about my life and who I am more with the women, because they value knowing who I am. They value me as a person. And they want a coach that they like and agree with and feel like is a good person. The men don't care. They just want a coach that can do the job. Yeah. It's a very different psychology to things, and I'm very aware of it. And so, where the men, it was like about the sport. Let's get on with it. Let's do it. This is, the women, this is how we're going to train. This is how we're going to achieve the things we want. Explain it to them so they feel like they're part of that experience. And they want to ask questions. They want to go, right, we're going to win this race. How? How are we going to go this fast? Whereas the men are like, right, we're going to go this fast. We're going to train hard. Okay, how are we going to train? Explain to me. They want to know. They want more information. I find that really great as a coach, because I get to actually talk to them about what we're trying to do in more detail than I did with the men. The men just didn't. They just got on with it. They didn't seem to mind so much. As long as they thought they would win, they didn't really care about the process as much. The women care about the process.
It's funny.
They do want to know.
Yeah.
It's a cliche almost, but it does still happen. It's okay, we're going to put the blade on the way forward. A guy would be like, okay, I'm going to do that, and then I would coach women, so we're going to put the blade in on the way forward, and they'd be like, but we can't really, can we though? Because then it would hit the wall.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Explain to
okay,
me how that's
done. Okay, well, we're not actually, but we're going to lift earlier, and that's hopefully we're going to play. Yeah, and there was like sort of more explanation, which was good. And I think back to myself as an athlete as well. I was just like, okay, do what I'm told, get on with it.
That's the plan. Sign me up.
I find that I don't like. In some ways, that's like I like as a athlete or as a coach, like you're sort of drawn to challenges and like new challenges. That's quite fun. I know you guys got the Wellness HQ lot in here with the girls. Is that like kind of looking at that side of things? Has it been?
Yeah, so we did that a couple of years ago, and it was brilliant. And I did it. I think I did it once before with them. Oh no, I went to a talk actually. So I think British Rowing had a series of lectures from experts, and they brought in the Well HQ. And I mean, they're brilliant. I could say how great they are. They're just great. They have so much knowledge, and they have so much. They have a wealth of experience. And they put it across in such a way that everyone can understand it. It's not overly complicated, and they do it in a really charming way, and they present the facts and the information so the athletes can really just take it on board. It's brilliant. But I always find the problem I have is we can be told, and I had this when I was an athlete as a nutritionist, right? So they come in and they tell you how to eat properly. And I go, yeah, that's how to eat properly. But then I don't live it. So living the knowledge that you're given is the important bit. The knowledge is everyone knows what a good diet is roughly, but living it is the hard bit. So getting them in was the easy bit, and then presenting was brilliant, and that was great. And then the athletes having to take ownership of living that new way of doing things. Like being open. And one of the things with the women is being open about their menstrual cycle, and some of them have more issues and some of them have less issues. And it's an uncomfortable thing for me to talk about if I've not experienced it. 2 or 3 years later, I'm so much more comfortable having those discussions with them. At first, it was really the Well HQ. They were like, "Look, you're going to be uncomfortable, but that's fine. You're uncomfortable because you are having to do something you've not done before. But embrace it, and eventually it will become normal." And it has. And now that's a normal conversation we can have with the athletes, and I think that's really healthy. But getting them in was great, and it was the easy bit. The hard bit was living it, and me then owning the fact that I had to live it with the athletes, because they have to be in control of their own bodies, and we have to work with them, and I have to understand them and be comfortable with those conversations that maybe as a younger coach and less experienced I was more uncomfortable with and probably tried to avoid, which I shouldn't do. So now hopefully that's better for the athletes, and it's better for me because I feel like I'm growing as a person and as a coach.
I think that's really important. I love what you said about the fact that you're still learning, and that's the right attitude to have, because as soon as you start putting yourself on a pedestal, that's when things are going to start to go downhill, isn't it?
I do find it, I mean, I'm not one of these coaches that posts online and things like that, but I do find it funny that people do it, and I'm always intrigued about what they want from it. Like when people tell you how good they are all the time, and you're thinking, I didn't ask. But like, is it normal to walk around and tell people how good you are at your job? Because I'm not sure in the normal society people walk around offices and tell everyone how good they are at their jobs and like brag about things and try and, I'm like, I think people just do their job and get on with it. It's like the praise is not the important bit, is it? It's the journey, the experience, and the relationships, and like the actual telling yourself you're good or having people tell you you're good is irrelevant.
Yeah, absolutely. Who cares? Who does?
That's not the job. I don't know why people worry about it. It's like, if you're not good, you probably won't have a job. So that's how you'll know you're not good.
Well, this is the thing. You first have to convince yourself to then other people maybe like start to catch on.
Some of the best coaches I know don't have the best jobs in the sport. And they don't care because they're happy with what they do. And like, some people are like, I need to coach the Olympics to prove that I'm a good coach. And other coaches who are way, way better than them, or some of the best coaches in the country that I know, they don't have jobs that are big celebrity jobs. And you're like, I don't need them. They're so content with who they are and what they do and how they do it. And their athletes are great. And if they coach better athletes, then they win more. But they don't. They coach those athletes, and those athletes do as much as they can with what they've got. And that's still a good coach. And that's a great coach. But because they haven't won all these accolades, people don't see it. And I'm like, I find that weird. Because judging a coach by what they've won is a really weird thing.
Yeah.
Because, obviously, if I pick any small rowing club, they're not going to be as successful as, a big successful rowing club like a Thames or a Leander or, whatever. But if you swap coaches, the same club will still win the same stuff. So the coach isn't the
limiting factor.
That's not the one who's succeeded.
Yeah.
Athlete structure and system generally, maybe a coach a little bit, but I mean, if you just swap 2 coaches over at a small club and a big club that are winning and not winning, I'm pretty sure their crews will still be the same way around. I don't think they'll suddenly swap.
Yeah. I mean, when you say that, Carl Reed is one of those coaches that springs to mind. He just doesn't care where he is, He just wants to do a good job. There are a couple of things that I don't want to miss. Okay. You said that you found that personally women needed to like get to know you more as a person in order to like really like buy into your system. I think it takes something different to like build trust between men and women, because like we're driven and we're motivated by different things, or like how we create bonds as people. And then secondly, you spoke about also at the start of the podcast how to like keep more athletes. Like maybe people are starting to think about retirement and things like that too early. Maybe there's not that much passion there. Like, do you think that comes down to the fact that we know the requirements of the sport? You're going to need to train 14, 15 times a week. It's going to be really cutthroat. It's going to be unforgiving. You're not going to have like any time if you dedicate. You're not going to have any time for anything outside of rowing because you need to like dedicate into that fully. Like, do you think maybe that's scaring some of the people off, and the fact that sport has evolved into that place?
Yeah, I think. Look, I think there's a lot of reasons for probably why the expectation of a career in rowing now is probably more like 1 to 2 cycles. When we were younger, it was probably more like 3, potentially 4. Mm-hmm. Some athletes did 5. I think there's probably multiple reasons for that. I think one of the reasons is that British rowing is a hard system to live in. I don't see the Australians and maybe the Kiwi athletes living the same experience as our British athletes live in. I think there's more freedom in those programs. They're less structured and they probably don't have as many athletes, and they're probably a little bit less centralized. Mm-hmm. But I think if you give athletes enough freedom to live a bit more of a life, and it doesn't have to be just rowing, there has to be a balance. It has to probably be the priority, you know, outside family. But I think if there was a bit more flexibility to do a little bit of time, you know, training on your own and things like that. And I think Imogen Grant, she's been at university in Cambridge, right? So she's trained away from the Olympic system. She's gone to university. She's smashing her degree. She's winning the boat race. She's having the best time ever.
Doing ergos in a car park.
Still coming back and winning gold medals at the World Championships. Yeah. And, you know, like, she's amazing. So that shows you what you can do. And I think the two guys in the pair did that. They went away. And so I just think the controlling nature of our system, potentially, it is probably putting off some young athletes who want a bit more freedom in their lives. And I get that. Times have changed. Athletes are different now. Young people are different now than they were before. But I think there is probably a way to make it a little bit more achievable. So if someone wants, you know, for instance, a lot of countries let athletes take that year off after the Olympics and have a break from it. British rowing less likely to let you do that, and I say let you do that. We're less likely that's less likely to be a thing in Britain. Okay, some athletes do it. My brother had a year off after Beijing, but he basically retired and then came back, so he didn't have a year off. Didn't say I'm going to have a year's break and then come back, because they probably wouldn't have gone for that. And I think if that was an option, or if there was an option to maybe do a little bit training in the early part of the season, maybe at your club environment or whatever, or go abroad and train abroad, but, you know, remotely. So if there's a bit more trust into the athletes, maybe that would encourage them to stay on. But fundamentally, it is, I mean, I say this to people, it's a hard sport. You train hard, you race hard, you live a hard life. But if you love the sport, that's a pleasure. And I say that, I'm not sure a lot of people get, maybe a lot of people don't get what I mean, but when you're an athlete and you love the sport you do and you push yourself to the very, very limit, you just feel brilliant. That is the best feeling ever, whether it's a race or a training session, and you just push yourself that a bit more than you thought you could, and you come out of it going, just, you know, that's the confidence we talk about. That will keep you going for as long as you love the sport. I mean, look at like Greg Searle, you know, a couple of Olympics, came back, did it again. Like, I think if we don't have the love of the sport early, for whatever reason, maybe that's probably the biggest factor for me. So at junior rowing and at university rowing levels, and this is hard because the sport's intense, but are we making sure that the athlete enjoys the experience enough to give themselves a chance that if they are going to love the sport, they actually do love the sport? Because I think most people could fall in love with our sport. It's brilliant, lovely sport. But if they're not given the opportunity to fall in love with it for whatever reason, then, you know, potentially that's never going to happen. And then, of course, they're not going to want to be in it forever because they want to get on with their lives. So, you know, but I think there's probably more elements than that. Just, it's not, I don't think there's one quick fix. And it might be that there doesn't need to be. Maybe 1 or 2 Olympic cycles is actually the new way of doing it and it's fine. But I don't like the experience of talking to a young athlete who's already talking about trying to get out of the sport before they even really got into it, because I just don't understand how that mindset works. You know, I don't get that from my perspective. But it is more common now than I think it ever has been.
You've nailed it. 100% agree.
Yeah, I think GB's found a way to make it work. Set up Caversham, get everyone there, and never let your eye off them for a second. And it's worked, and it's produced medals. But like you said, the things going on around the world, you know, we spoke to Emma Dyke and the New Zealand squad and those kind of things, and it was really interesting, to see how it's going. But also, you know, I think you can see that things are changing. But it's as enjoyable as it is a tough life. Yeah. Towards the end of my career, I was sort of really struggling. For the most part, like I said, like, it was a joy to be in it. And then I remember we went and did one horrible regatta, and that evening I sat with John Collins and Nick Middleton, the 3 of us, and I was like, there's so many things I'd rather be doing now. And John was like, there's nothing I'd rather be doing. And I was like, it might be time to get out now. Because I was like, I'm not feeling that anymore. Yeah.
I think you know when you know. I had a lot of people that I rode with that were like, oh, I'm going to stop rowing, you know, now I'm going to stop rowing. I always thought they stopped too early. And I'm never sure if you know the time to stop. But I know if you stop too early, you'll never find peace. And I think a lot of athletes, and I think that's when athletes get forced into retirement for injuries or whatever. I think that's when they really struggle to cope with life afterwards, because it wasn't their choice to stop. So they didn't get that option to like, oh, I'm walking away. Whereas you're fine. You know, I feel calm about it. I walked away when I was ready to walk away. And like I said, I didn't retire. Not really a career that you can retire from. But when I walked away from it, I didn't feel like I'd left anything more to do that I couldn't do. So I felt calm. I never once regretted not carrying on anymore.
Yeah.
But if I'd have stopped a year or 2 earlier, maybe I would have had regrets about it. So I think some athletes feel like it's like cool to say you're going to stop or cool that you're going to quit. That's the cool thing to say now, like to show that you don't care about it that much. But actually, don't be afraid to say you care about something, especially if it's the sport you love or even the people you love. Like to tell them you care about them. If the sport you love that you're in, tell people, I love my sport. Like John Collins did to you, like nowhere else I'd rather be. He's still rowing now, isn't he? There's nowhere else you'd rather be. That's great. I love that. It's not about gold medals all the time. Sometimes it's about living the best life you can for as long as you can. If that's what makes him happy, who are we to comment?
Is there anyone who's been up the mountain more times than him, do you reckon?
Oh, do you know what? It's a good shout.
He's got
to be the longest serving member at Caversham almost, hasn't he?
Yeah, because we also, as well, like, it was our year where they first started taking under 23s up there. So we will have done we did 3 or 4 before we even went to the senior team, maybe. So,
brutal.
No, I know. He's absolutely savage.
That's a camp, that is.
I've always had a lot of respect for people who know when to quit. It's a difficult thing to do, especially when your dreams are on the line. But yeah, I agree with you. I think you sort of want to close the chapter. You want to know that, and that sometimes means staying in a little bit longer than maybe would have been comfortable, but then realizing that, okay, I'm good with this decision.
I don't know if you've ever noticed this, because you're younger than I am, probably actually a decent chunk younger, but we kind of rode similar sort of periods in the sport. But I always find it funny now that I look around at how many people from our generation, joint generations.
You're closer in age to him than I.
I'm 35, so it's 7 years
still
apart.
7 years apart.
Yeah.
But like at the time that we were at the club, it's a Leander thing, really, I guess, because it's a lot of people that were here. But like, how many of our group are coaches now? There's so many. So our experience must have been brilliant, and it must have been a joy because everyone has taken that into, I want to work in the sport and experience it. I think it was like something like 15 or 20 coaches I named who either were full-time or part-time coaches in the sport now from our group over like 10 years. Yeah. That's a massive section of coaches. It's brilliant. I love that.
I love it because I get to fix all their rowing machines.
Yeah.
We do Colin up in Edinburgh, Al at St Andrews. Yeah. God, the list. Yeah, we go crazy.
Moffat,
do them. We do them.
So it's a massive pool of people that were in our system. So either they learned to love the sport when they came here, which would be great to say, if that's the case, or they'd already loved it so much before they came here, they were always going to carry on in it. But either way, the love for the sport was there early. I think that's important,
Yeah, definitely. We've spoken to a lot of people about it, and a lot of advice has always been, and I'd give people the same advice, like, if your dream is the Olympics, there will be plenty of time to take this seriously. Like, it will get incredibly serious incredibly quickly. Like, you don't need to rush that. Like, you can just make sure you're enjoying it and having fun, because you can't do anything for very long if you're not having fun. And I like also what you kind of said about it. Again, we spoke with Crossy about it, but Al Sinclair rode for so long without any sort of silverware or anything like that, and continued up and then went into the Olympic team. And his response was just like, I just kind of took stock at the end of the year. Am I enjoying it? Do I enjoy where I am, the people I'm with, and what I do? And like you said, ultimately the medals and everything are smaller than that. And I think, again, I can't remember who it was we spoke about, but was saying, it was Dave Bell, wasn't it? He's like, would I swap an Olympic gold medal for all the fun and the friendships and the connections that I made? Like, no. And it's not to devalue that. I'd obviously like one, but no, I would not swap it for those things. And when you come to the end of the career and look back, cool, that the Henley win was cool, but like the friends that you have forever, and those friends that you can not see for 10 years, and then you see them at Henley, and you're there.
So my Henley medals are in a box at my parents' house. I can't tell you where they are. They're in the box at my parents' house. I know they are because that's where I left them 15 years ago, whatever it was. So, and I will never see them again, and it wouldn't bother me. But my friends and the relationships, they are the thing that is everything. And I went to I used to be a boat captain in London. I was working on the river, and I felt something heavy in my jacket one night, and I put my hand in there, and it was my brother's Olympic gold medal. So he borrowed my jacket the night before on concert somewhere, right? And he just left his gold medal in my jacket, right? So I'm at work on the river, not the safest place for someone to have a gold medal. And I rang him up, and I was like, you've left your medal in my jacket pocket. He goes, oh, cool, I'm in town actually. He goes, might be quite handy to have it on me tonight, so can you bring it over to me? So after work, I drove across London and gave it to him and his mates, and then they basically got like the free entry to a nightclub or something like that, and like VIP bar. But it was funny, like the medal meant nothing to him, except it kind of like it got him into a nightclub or whatever it is. And the medals that I'd won, they're at my parents' house, and I don't need them because the experiences are what I can remember those races. I sometimes play it back in my mind, and like it's like watching a great movie that you love. You're like, I love thinking back through that. But that's the bit that you want the medal at the time. And people talk about winning a red box or winning an Olympic gold medal, but it's not the medal. Like that's just the token thing you put on the shelf. You're like, it's like a paperweight. You're like, I like that paperweight, but you buy it in the shop and you don't really look at it ever again. But it's just it's the experiences and the relationships and stuff. That's everything.
I totally agree. And not that I've won that many, but mine are at the bottom of my parents' self-storage. I haven't seen them in years.
Dude, and you'll never look for them, because why? You don't need them.
Yeah.
You won those things. The memories are gold. The medal is a bit of metal.
Yeah.
I think I was talking to someone thinking back about 2008 when we won the Thames Cup and the Ladies' Plate, and I really didn't understand at the time how special it is to celebrate with 18 people, and we were all at that club all year. There was no ringers. That was like 18 people that have all been rowing together all year get to go out and celebrate. And I was like, that never happened again. Like maybe some under 23 teams with some shared medals, but like that was, those are the things to think about more in the moment.
So I was going to ask, we spoke about athletes quitting maybe slightly too early. We also had a chat with Dave Bell where we kind of like talked about the opposite, where coaches aren't necessarily like being honest with their athletes and are stringing them along to almost artificially prolong their career because they want to get more Met and Marlow medals. How do you strike that balance between like honesty and...
I'm probably... It's hard for me to say with that.
I know you're very honest, but some coaches aren't.
Okay, so I feel I'm honest, but then there might be athletes that think I'm not. So I try to be honest and upfront and transparent, because winning medals is not my job. My job is to facilitate athletes achieving what they can. So if an athlete tells me they think they can do something, even if I don't agree, I will support them as much as I can to do that. But I might say to them that I think this is unlikely, or I think this is going to be really hard, and this is the thing you'll need to do. And I'll make it a realistic thing that I probably think they probably can't do, to make sure they understand what the levels are they would need to hit. And the same way as if someone comes in and says, look, I'm thinking about stopping, I'll look, okay, have you thought this through? Why? And if I can understand why, and like, if it's for certain reasons, an athlete decided they want to stop this year for family reasons, and can't argue with that. Like, if that's what you feel, then that's probably the right thing to do. If you want my advice, were you going to win anything more? How could I know? I can't look into the future. Were you on track for these things? Potentially, what would be the likelihood of you getting selected? I could probably give you a bit of a gauge on that. So I can be honest about the things that I probably can be quite honest about.
Yeah.
I don't know everything, but I don't think keeping athletes around to win medals just to make the squad or the coach look more successful wouldn't fulfill me. That would be spoiling my journey as a coach, and that's as important to me as anything. So I want to feel like I'm a good person. I want to feel like I'm doing a good job for my athletes, and I have it all the time with athletes who want to stop or start or whatever it is, and some of them come in and go, should I just quit? And you're like, well, okay, if you want to, then yes, because it's your choice. But why do you want to quit? Are there things that we can talk through and discuss and have some kind of structure to? Then we can make a good decision. I think too many athletes try and make decisions based on emotions, and I always say to the athletes, emotions are our worst enemies, because we're emotional beings, at different levels, but they don't let you think logically or clearly. So what you need to do is try and separate emotion from your decisions, so you can make a logical decision that's best for you. So some athlete who never wants to admit they're going to not be successful again, but logically, if their career is on the decline, all the elements say they're on the decline, all they care about is going to the Olympics, and you go, look, you're probably not going to go to the Olympics. That doesn't mean they're going to stop rowing, but it means that you've at least said to them, look, you're not looking like you're on track. And some athletes the other way, but it's just trying to not make it emotional decisions, because that's the decision that you're probably going to go backwards and forwards with. If you can calm down, if you can get them to think logically and clearly and structure it, then the decision they make is their decision, not mine. And I'm happy with any athlete making a decision, and I'll support it either way if I can.
Yeah, I think I love that. And also what you said, like, you've absolutely hit the nail on the head with saying that you, as a coach, you're there to facilitate the best out of your athletes and to help them achieve what it is they want to achieve. You're not a coach to win some medals. Like that's I think that's the important bit. It comes down to your philosophy of why you're doing this.
Yes, it's process, not outcome. Create an environment where people can be the best version of themselves, and the outcome will be success in certain measures. I also like what you said about in terms of when an athlete brings maybe what might be an unachievable goal to them. It's what comes back to what we talked about. Don't take their confidence away. So allow them to reach for the stars, but make them understand that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
So it's like, look, I'm not going to say you can't, but we need to understand that this is a huge thing, midterm goals.
So I do at the start of the season, I sort of lay down like, this is the standards that I believe you would need to achieve to make the GB senior team and to win an Olympic medal and to win Henley Royal in certain categories. And these are the things that make up that standard. You know, like you need a crew average of potentially this erg score for 2K. You know, you need to have people that turn up this amount of times a week and row this quality, and they row their boat speeds in these boats and that boat at this level. And this is the sort of paddling speed you probably have to hit. So you give them loads of different criteria of what makes up a successful crew for the level they're aiming for. Then they can hopefully, through the season, assess whether they're on track for those things. So when you have a discussion, they already know where they sit. If you keep all the information together and you don't share it with the athletes, you don't talk to them through it, they don't know where they stand half the time. And I think that's really stressful for an athlete, because there should be multiple opportunities in a season to really like track people and go, look, this is where we are. This is our squad average. This is, you know, if we were going to put out our best 8, this would be the average for the best 8 on the water and in pairs and in fours and on the erg. And is that looking like the crew that might win this event? Yeah, that's actually, from my experience, that's on track. Or we're not on track. We need more of you. You know, the best athletes are good enough. We need more bulk, more, you know, more critical mass to perform at this level to give us the opportunity. And then it's on the athletes to perform at that level to get where they want to get to. Not for me. No, I don't select athletes for votes. Athletes select athletes for votes. I just recognize the performance, you know.
Yeah.
But if you do enough stuff, performance is easy to mark. You know, if you wait to seat race and that's all you do and that's the only thing you compare people on, well, that one day you turn to a seat race, if people are injured or ill, what information have you got to go on?
Yeah.
You train once, twice a day, all year. You've got multiple levels of information you can use if you really want to look at it, but you have to know how to look at it, how to structure it, so it's easy to look at, because otherwise it's just numbers and figures all over the place and it gets a bit overwhelming.
So this brings me beautiful to my next question, which is obviously like when I first came to Leander, I saw you coach a group of, it was about 10 people. Now you manage a squad of, what is it, 50, 60 women?
No, everyone does this. So we've got 33 women.
I mean, there's still triple.
Yeah, no, it's a lot. So
So what are some of the challenges that like come with like obviously managing and dealing with such a larger group, like more data, more decisions to make, possibly more dreams to fulfill or more dreams to squash?
Yeah, it is a challenge, but like an athlete, every year I want to be more challenged. Doesn't mean bigger squads every year. So the reason it's 30 is a few things. So the men's squad's roughly 30. And we're one of the programs that try and go that we are equal opportunity, you know, and we supply our women's squad and our men's squad equally with everything we do. But the other thing is, so if I want to be successful at one of our major events, which is say Henley Royal, okay? So if I want to be successful at Henley Royal, the way that Leander run their program is I'll need to win what is the only thing available to me is the Open, the category. So the Remenham, the Town, and, you know, the Stoner and the Hambledon, and the Princess Grace and the Princess Royal. So they're the open categories, so they're the Olympic levels. So probably, unless they're the Olympic team, which some Leander people are in, I can't win them very regularly because I'm racing Olympic crews. And sometimes, I mean, like last year, I had a 4 racing my own 4 in the final, the GB Senior 4 racing our club 4. So you can't both win. So, but in Olympic years, say like this, when the Olympic teams might not come, and last Olympics was 2021. So we won 6 out of the 7 open events that year. And the Wargrave. So out the 7 events I can enter, I didn't win. The athletes won 6, and they made the final and lost by about a length in the 7th, right? So I think we had like 26 athletes win a Henley medal that day from the
Wow.
My pride was watching them in like swum out to each other after the final of the race. It was an amazing day. All the athletes will process one of the best days of their life, right? So it was brilliant. But to achieve those events, I have to have a certain amount of athletes. So if I'm going to do a Remenham and a Town and a Hambledon and a Stoner, I need 30 athletes in total to make that work.
Yeah.
So I always look at if we're best as we can be and I've got the right athletes, those 30 athletes will give us the opportunity to enter one crew in each of those events and have chances of winning. Okay. The problem is every year we probably lose 4 or 5 athletes on average to the GB senior team. So if I start off with 30, I lose 5. I now got 25. So we always start off with maybe like 34, 35, and then we have a bit of in and out and time and stopping. So it's a lot of athletes, back to the point you originally said. But that's why. So we have those athletes to try and make sure that we can target the things we need to target, because we do sculling and sweep. So it's not 30 athletes for one top 8, which would be a great, easy program to run. I'm trying to get scullers, sweepers, people rowing pairs, 4s, quads, doubles. And that's the lovely challenge of it. I love that part of it. The the organization and the structure is my pride. I love being structured and organized as much as I can, and having things balanced and trying to work out the ways of doing my job that a little bit better and how to get to where we need to be at the end of the season by using the months that I have available now. So, if I've got a few people that I need to teach to row a certain way or change a certain thing, how can I, without changing the whole program around those 2 or 3 athletes, how can I use the athletes I've got to develop athletes through that season to get to where we need to be? That's a great challenge, and I love that. But having more athletes is only a hindrance if I don't organize and structure it in a way that big squads run. So the old squad at the end was run small numbers. Bigger squads can't be run the same way, and you just have to adapt to that. And one of the things I wanted was a bigger squad, so I had to then make sure that it never failed, because if I asked for more athletes, then I'm not running those athletes and managing them well. Then next year the committee are going to go, you can't do this, you need to go back to smaller numbers.
Sure.
And then I can't be as open to letting the athletes win what they need to win if I've got less numbers. So it's about giving the athletes enough of a chance to be successful, which is the numbers I need, and then me making sure that I do the job well enough that that's never a problem. So it is a challenge, a really good challenge, really exciting. I do enjoy it. It gets stressful because I care.
Yeah, that's what gets you.
Yeah, it's stressful. I care. But fundamentally, the athletes run the program. I facilitate the running of the program, but they turn up every day. They do the training as it's meant to be done at the right level it's meant to be done. They then perform at the levels they should perform at. I'm just managing it. It's not like I'm not doing everything. It's 95% the athletes and 5% me just making sure that everything's running smoothly.
No, that makes sense.
I do enjoy being involved in rowing and not having to do the training. That's quite good.
One of the things I've been really smart about is I bring in really good coaches to work with me, because I'm not the best. So I bring in people that I respect and I think add value. Just the last month. So Richard Chambers is obviously my assistant. He's now coaching the women's 8 at GB rowing. So he's working with them for the season. So he's coaching the Olympic 8. Most of them, the whole 8 was Leander last year when they qualified. Might be that most of them are in that 8 this year. So that could be mostly a Leander women's 8 going to the Olympics, which is fantastic. The athletes we've developed. And then this year, working with Rob Morgan, fantastic coach. Robin Williams has been in working with us as well. I've got a couple of interns. Harriet Taylor's been working with us. She's a brilliant intern. I'm really enjoying working with her. We've got Mark Shimon, who's a lover of rowing from Upper Thames, who's working with us. He's doing some really good work with the development athletes. Rick Edgington's come back down. He's doing some coaching. He's loving it. It's just being smart about bringing in the right people to work with your squad.
Yeah.
Because I need people that are better coaches than me, as good as me, maybe who don't require as much management as I would need if I was them. Because there's different levels of the squad that need certain things that I can't provide everything for. I'm not the person who can solve everything. So having different people, different opinions, different eyes, and allowing them to do their jobs and support them is actually a big part of my job now. So I think I love doing that. I love helping other coaches be better at their job. Makes my job easier.
Yeah. It takes a certain level of experience and maturity to also understand your strengths and where to position yourself within such a machine. And like
Rob Morgan's another one that sort of comes to mind when people say
the passion that man has. It puts me to shame.
I remember, I guess it would have been like 09-ish. He was down at Leander just doing some part-time stuff. He took a random 4 hours in, and I was like, well, why is this guy just picking up random crews and helping out down the bottom? And it's just insane. And also, one time I saw him at Ship Lake. I was down at Ship Lake fixing ergos, and David Tanner, who's on the board there, came down to have a look. So we both ran and hid in the boathouse, so that we didn't have to go and talk to him. But me and them were like, "Where's he gone? He's over there."
Yeah. I love your technical model, Rossi. What are some of the differences between sweep and sculling when it comes to coaching and making the most out of the athlete? Can you coach them the same, or are they very, very different?
I think the things that move a boat are the same. Length, power, rate, rhythm, efficiency. They're all the same key elements. But because of the nature of the sport that you're doing, one symmetrically over a longer arc, one a shorter arc, then of course there are elements that are different. So for instance, the spoon going in the water is the same sculling and sweep, but how you have to move to do that is different because of the body position you're in. So there are subtleties to adapting from one to the other, but the same elements apply, but the same process a different process is required to achieve the same outcome because of the positions that you're sitting in. So obviously, when you're in a sweep boat and you're, going around the front end of the arc, you're trying to place a bigger spoon, but in a more in a less relaxed position than a sculling boat, because a sculling boat being symmetrically, as long as you allow yourself to open up, you can get good range, and you can also have quite good dexterity in your two hands, small handles, light spoons, a smaller spoon to put into the water, much easier to do. A bigger spoon across one side of your body, or you're actually having to try and almost work into your own body's mechanics a little bit to try and get that spoon under control. And the same through the drive, hanging onto a arc that you are rowing through is really difficult on a sweep boat compared to a sculling boat. A sculling boat, you don't really have to worry about the arc. The mechanics of the boat do that for you. You drive a straight line. As long as you're loose enough to allow your body to move through the arc, which is your arms really, then you're good. In a sweep boat, timing the arc rotation, drive and recovery is actually a little bit more of a skill that you have to learn, and that's where most people go wrong. It's the timing of their self through the arc that they don't quite manage. They don't match up to what the boat wants, so they're in the wrong position at the wrong part of the stroke. Therefore, they can't quite get it the way they want. In terms of rowing elements that we would look for, so one of the things is to be in a correct position by the time you get to quarter slide. People talk about separation, and of course you want separation, but if you separate too much, it looks mechanical. It doesn't look actually relaxed enough, and it probably looks like you're working too hard to fulfill what you think a model looks like rather than actually rowing what the model is. So there's always blending between movements, and by being at quarter slide on the recovery, that means if you're in the right position there, if you've got your body weight transferred over, you've got your arms away, and you've got your sort of self set on the sea, then the boat should allow you to be brought forward without you doing too much more. So you actually get a recovery, but you also arrive at the front end of the stroke ready, so that all you have to do is time the spoon. If you're trying to change your body position on the way forward after quarter slide, it becomes more and more hard to change direction with the right skill in the right position. So people mistime it and misjudge it. So I think that's one of the elements that I would look for, is a quarter slide on the recovery. Are you in the right position? And the same would be, in the drive phase. If a quarter slide through your drive phase, or maybe half to quarter slide, if you're not in the same position roughly that you were in on the recovery cycle at that point, you've probably either moved your body too much, you moved your seat too much, you've moved your arms too much, so you've mistimed where the boat is. So I think a few parts of the stroke you can just track, and you can kind of go, these are the positions I need to be in, and this is how I need to be in those positions. And then the other thing is just allowing the person to feel the boat, because being in the right positions, if it's not in time with the boat, and I think Tom James did a talk at Leander a couple of years ago, and he said the technical model is one thing, but he said timing is everything. And I agree with that. Timing is everything, because static movements don't move a boat. Okay, they have to be fluid, and they have to be in sync with the boat, whatever that boat is. And obviously a single, double, quad, pair 4/8, they all have different rhythms to them, and they have different rhythms from different types of, so you're in a boat with one person, you go to another boat, it's a different rhythm. You've got to be able to feel that and address that and time your technical model to that new rhythm and that new timing point. And that's what people struggle with. They think it's like an ergo, they just move their body, and you can't be out of time because you're only doing yourself. But you can be out of time in a single, even though you're in it on your own, because the boat's not moving it the way you're. So then it just gets more and more exasperated and exaggerated, because there's 8 of you in a boat now, no one's in time. You all rowing the technical model, but you're out of sync with each other and the boat. So that's 9 things wrong, So I think that's how I look at rowing: is technical model, structured, pretty basic. I think everyone would probably go. 99% of people will say row the way that I would say row, because that's how people decide to row. Timing is the thing that is really important. And I think having an eye for timing is really important. And it's the one thing that I think, I don't use telemetry as much as some people do. I think it has value, but I don't think it should override the coach's eye and the coach's expertise. So you should be looking at the telemetry to help you develop the rowing stroke that you already want, not to change what you think. So if you look at a boat, you go, that's brilliant. You see the telemetry, it's crap. Don't think that means that boat's not good, because if it's going fast on the watch, and they are rowing the way you want them to row, and they enjoy it, but the numbers aren't the numbers that you think you should be seeing, well, that's what we said. They're not that crew that maybe is that gold medal standard, but maybe they're going as well as they can for that boat, and maybe that's the way that they need to row. So you're coaching what you see rather than trying to coach numbers. But the numbers are still, rowing's a 90-degree arc, and sculling's 110-degree arc. There are basic figures, but they're not precise as much as people think they are.
Sure.
If I go to the telemetry guys at Caversham, and you go, right, tell me perfect telemetry, they still can't give you a straight answer. They can give you elements of what it probably is, but there's no straight model of this is perfect telemetry. So a coach has to know what they're doing with it, and that's sometimes using it too much. You just use it, and you think using it is what's going to move them on, and actually using bits of the data and using that to structure what you're trying to improve. Like, what we're going to work on our front end placement, well, you can use to catch slippage in the length of stroke. You can use it for that, but then you probably need to ignore the other stuff, because if you work on that thing, other things might not be great for a few days. And so it's just a bit of a kind of it's a trial and error, but it's not one thing more important than others. I think there's, technical model, timing, coach's eye, experience, a stopwatch, the most basic thing in the world. Are they actually going fast? Athlete feedback, invaluable, and telemetry. There's loads of things a coach can use these days. It's brilliant. Back in the day, it was just your eye and maybe a stopwatch or a sundial. Now you've got so much you can use to get a boat to go well. There's almost no excuse for a boat not going as well as it should.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. That was great. Way more comprehensive than I could have even asked for.
I did not mean to go into depth.
No, I love that.
I'm sort of thinking as I'm talking and going, oh, okay, that's how it would be.
No, I love that. I think
there's some coaches
so
that
great.
are a bit guarded about those kind of things. So
I didn't invent rowing, and I'm not the best coach in rowing, so I don't anything I know. I've been taught by other people, or I've stumbled on it. I'm sure a million people have stumbled on it before me. I didn't invent anything, so
No, that's really interesting. I like the thing. It was a huge thing for me. I remember talking about coaches again, Jeffrey Bacon down at Leander. I remember he once stopped us. Must have been early on, and was like, right, it's not legs, body, arms. It's legs and body. Legs and body and arms, body and arms and arms. Yeah. And that sounds so simple, but it's the first time I was like, because obviously we were just really working in our separate bits, and little things like that, and understanding, and like you said, it is a sport that attracts people that love data, because there are so many data points, but then it becomes so easy to get lost in the data, and ultimately, was it fast? And that gets forgotten about quite a lot.
I used to have this saying early on. I don't use it as much anymore, but I used to say to the athletes, it's not dressage, because just looking good is the aim. Obviously, you want to watch yourself row and be proud of how you're rowing, and you've got this idea of what beautiful rowing is. And I remember watching my brother and Zach win their gold medal, and I was like, if you're going to win a gold medal and you row like that, that is the perfect. You row perfectly, you win your gold medal. That it's all great. But other people won a gold medal and they didn't look like that, and their gold medal's not any less valuable because they were like, we got to just go fast, and going fast requires different things for different people. And I think that's the bit that I'm always like, we want to look good, but we want to look good because that's effective and that's efficient, not just for the sake of looking
not
good.
for vanity, yeah.
That's not the aim, just to look good. It's to look good because looking good means you're probably rowing well, and rowing well probably leads on to being effective, and effective probably means you're going as fast as you can. So it's not, that's not the end goal. That's just part of the process.
Yeah. I love that. Love that. Don't row for vanity.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what you do after you finish rowing. Then you spend the rest of your
look back now on pictures and videos. What I find the most upsetting now, so the Henley Royal Regatta, for instance, the footage is amazing, right? And you can watch race after race after race, and people who have had great races now have that forever because it's online, and you can the races that we had back in the day. I just I wish I could have a video of those things now, just to reminisce and sit there with the people you won it with, and watch it and just kind of go, oh, that was amazing, because you're in that race and your perception of that race is from that seat. But having to look at it from externally and go, oh, look how that race was, because maybe it wasn't as close as I thought it was, or maybe it wasn't as clear cut or whatever it is. But I'll never see those races. But the kids now who race and the athletes who race now, they get to watch it time is coming. It must be brilliant.
Yeah,
they must love it. I mean, one of my athletes said that she's watched the one when they won Henley. She must have watched it 20 times in the first week after they won, just because she couldn't believe they'd won that race. And I was like, that's amazing. I love that. It's great. You're so happy about it. You want to relive that race over and over again. That's great. That you must love rowing.
Yeah, there's certain things where the perspective from the boat was so different. You could be saying to them, oh yeah, we absolutely dispatched them at halfway, and it's 2:50 to go, and they're still in contact. No, you didn't. No.
Yeah, but they perceive it, and again, confidence. They're like, I remember someone saying to me at Henley, I'd got to the start. It was one of my old members from my old rowing club. He goes, I was at the start, and I think it was a semi-final or a quarter-final of the Foley. It was only young, and I saw them at the start, and I was on the state boat, and I waved. And he goes, I just thought that was so cool that you waved from the start of Henley. And I went, yeah, but I never thought I wouldn't win that race. So if it was a race I was stressed about, I wouldn't have done that. Mm. But it was an early round. And he was like, I always thought that was the coolest thing ever. And then he ended up racing at Henley years later, and he remembered being on the start line and being like, oh, that was so cool. And I was like, it's a weird thing that sticks in his mind because I was a kid and I just saw someone I knew and I waved to him.
Yeah.
A race I wasn't stressed about. But that race, I remember doing that. Other races, I can't remember any of the starts or any of the. I just remember that one moment because he talked to me about it. I went, oh, I remember doing that.
Yeah.
Like a weird thing. But most of my starts at Henley, I don't remember. I don't remember the first 500s or like I only remember the bits of the races, but not the whole thing. But it'd be nice to watch them back now. Even the ones I lost, I'm like, I wonder if I could have won that race. Let me watch it again and see if there's a way I probably could have.
Yeah, but then maybe then you're stuck by just going over it. I remember I listened to a little speech that the strokeman of the Canadian 4 did from Athens when they lost on the
That
nine.
was a race, wasn't it?
He was like, every time I watch it, I was like, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Ah, they got us again.
That was a race. That was like, that was.
Yeah.
If you're going to watch rowing and because most rowing races are pretty done. Like there's very few close rowing races. Because of the nature of our sport, it's momentum. Once a crew moves, if you don't do anything, then they're just going to keep moving, and it's more about average boat speed than it is anything significant about any sort of small section. But you watch some race like that, and you go, how can you have two crews that are split by such a small margin over such a long race? But yeah, at different points in that race, there were big distances. Like it was almost half a length or 3/4 length, and then he's like. What a brilliant thing to say that you were part of, win or lose. It's just an amazing achievement,
Yeah, I've said that. Yeah, I've lost. So I've been in 4 Henley finals. I've said this before. But, so I won the Thames Cup by 6, and I lost the plate by 6, 3, and 1. So in 4 finals, got like a total distance of like 17 feet or something.
Oh,
but I still look back at them being some of the best races because I can sit and say like, there's nothing more I could have done. Like, I don't feel like there was anything that went wrong. It was, maybe there was some advantage, disadvantage on the lane or whatever, but that was the lane we got.
Henley's that is.
Yeah, that being said, I get to look back and then be like, that was a race.
So I won the Y-Foals in 2001 with 2 guys from the crew the year before I'd won the Fawley with.
Oh, nice.
Right. And it was a brilliant race, but the crew we were racing in the final were better than us. They were. And they'd been better than us all year. And there was no doubt on the day there was still a faster 4. We had the inside, and it had rained a lot that week, and it was enough to just push it in our favour. And what happened is they could have still won that race, but they didn't race their best because of the pressure of being in the wrong station. So we won it by, I think, 3 foot or a canvas right at the end. But we'd been a length up, we'd been a length down, and then we came back through and won. But they were still so much better than us. They would have won had they not reacted badly to the race. But the race put them under pressure. They didn't react well to it. They made bad decisions at certain points. And when it got to the end, they hadn't thought about how they were going to finish off the race. And we had, because we'd literally had a chat with Banksy in the morning. And he went, this is how the race is going to go. He goes, I can tell you now, you're going to get off the start and you're going to lead. They're going to come back through you in the middle. He goes, and if you just stick with them, just keep sticking with them. He goes, there'll be just enough time in the sprint finish to get back through. He said, but you've got to do those bits. You cannot falter from that race plan. And we did that race plan. Their coach probably didn't tell them how the race was going to go or give them enough of a steer. So in the middle, they were just left to their own devices, and the steering went, and they probably lost half a length on their steering, and then they just didn't quite get the rhythm right. And I think they overcooked their first bit to try and catch us up. And then when they got through in the middle and they got a length, I think they backed off because they thought they'd had it. And then I think they just did so many things wrong. So we won because of the conditions, but they didn't lose because of the conditions.
Yeah.
They lost because they didn't race their race plan properly. So it's interesting how that race went my way, but not because the other crew were unable to beat us because of the conditions. The conditions allowed that race to unfold in the way that it did, but they still could have won it. And I always think that was a real lesson learned for us. It's not just about the conditions or the crew. Sometimes it's delivery on the day. If you don't deliver what you're capable of, then of course anyone can win. And it's a really, I think, as a young athlete, you go, right, we won that race, but actually they lost it. We did what we should have done perfectly, but they underperformed, and that's why we won. And that's no less of a win. That's just understanding how the race was. It wasn't because we suddenly were miraculously better on that one day than we'd been all season, or the stream was worth the 2 lengths we would need. It was probably worth a length, but they probably lost a length because they didn't do their job. It always sticks in my mind, that race.
I'm fascinated by it. This is a fascinating story.
I talk about that with a lot of crews about not being the crew that doesn't turn up on the day, because there's always one.
Yeah, remember that that was never meant to go that way.
No.
2 crews turned up for the final, and 1 crew delivered, and the other crew just didn't get what they were nowhere near where they should have been.
We had no pressure on us because no one expected us to win.
How is this going this way? Because everyone was, we were all in the back watching it. It was like, how are they doing this? Like, and you couldn't have just been that much better that day. They had you. You were the best you could be. They underperformed.
Yeah,
that's how races are, one-on-one.
They allowed that pressure of we're supposed to win this, and this is how it should go. And I remember the quote from Coach Garrow is, "It's just because you deserve it doesn't mean anyone's going to give it to you.
Exactly.
You can do all the work to get there, and you can be capable of the win, but you still, in that moment, have to do."
Stevie Williams has got something similar. He's like, everything you do before the final is what you had to do to earn the right to be in the final, but then you start again.
Yeah.
He goes, so being on the start line in the final, he goes, all you've done is to earn the right to be in that final. That's every bit of training, every score, every speed, every race, and then you start the final level. He said, you don't go into the final with an advantage. You just earn the right to be in the final. And I think that's an amazing way to look at it, because I think that's right. Like that's why, in a sport like ours, where most races do go to plan, the ones that don't surprise us so much. But actually, you've got 8 people in that boat. Any one of them on their day has a bad day. Like you said, the whole crew misjudge it or panic or get stressed. That's why Henley's probably the most exciting event, because there is so many elements that you have to get right to succeed.
Yeah.
Whereas straight lane racing, much more consistent.
Yeah, I think you can get caught up sort of feeling like you deserve it in some sense. It's and it happens to the best. We've probably all been caught with that thought, like, oh, you've done the work, like I deserve, but you gotta make it happen.
I love that. Steve's a legend.
Nice. What an unbelievable man. We got him in lockdown. We got him in to do a talk to the athletes.
You got Steve to do a talk?
Yeah. So it was online. He did a presentation about climbing Everest. And I was just blown away by it. Just amazing thing to do. But amazing for someone I know who isn't a climber to do what he did, and and then to be able to tell it in a way that is so natural and such a kind of like he kept bringing things back to how a rower would perceive it. And I just thought that was a genius part of like presenting to a group and understanding what he was actually saying was, this is for rowers, but I'm talking about something that isn't rowing, but I'll give them enough little bits that they can make them feel like they get it. It was brilliant. I loved it, and the athletes loved it. Just thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, transferable skills, if we try and talk about it as well. There's so much you can learn from rowing that applies so well to life that maybe people don't realise.
Awesome. I guess we just got some quick fire round questions to ask you.
Come on, fire round, okay.
Quick fire round, yeah.
Right, so is it my quickest answer?
No, the questions
take time.
The questions are quick because I know what I'm going to ask. There's no time for me to stumble and think, oh, should I say it like this or like that? Cool. Out of all the rowing venues that you've trained at, raced at, or visited, what are some of your favourites and why?
Okay. Favourite race venue is Henley Royal Regatta.
Yeah.
And I don't count it as Henley because I don't think when the regatta's not here, it's not the same course. But I think Henley is the one that I love the most because I just think it's got the most excitement and energy around it. International racing is very different, but I think Henley is the one that I'd go for.
It delivers every day, doesn't it?
Just, 6 days. 6 days now. Yeah, it's just every day, 6 days. Yeah.
Awesome. What's your favourite crew type?
Boat type, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. To coach.
Let's do both.
Right. To rowing, I loved the single scull. I wasn't that good in it, but I loved it because I could control every element of it, and if I wanted to work, it was like I could just work on that one thing, and I could know if I got it right because it was so responsive. I had nobody else to worry about, so I loved the single scull for the joy of rowing a boat myself. That was the most responsive, the most payback I got for what I did. To coach, I like coaching quads probably the most.
Yeah. Quads, yeah. So quads are a little bit elusive. Like what actually does make them go? I know this isn't quick fire, but
the hard thing to get right in a quad is the length of stroke you want to apply and how much you're willing to let the boat work for you, and trying to find the right ratio for your crew is really important because it's a lot of load that you can put down. It's really efficient at quad, but if you spend too long pushing, you won't get enough time for the boat to run. And if you row too short, you won't have enough time for the boat to accelerate in the push. So I think that it's a bit like an 8 that way, but an 8's just more physical. A quad is a subtle step back from an 8, and it's about the rhythm between the drive and the recovery that you have to get right for that crew so that they can go at their maximum pace or their most efficient race pace at the best rhythm. And it's always just a fine art trying to figure out how you get that out of each crew. how long they need to row, and what sort of rate they need to go over at to be the most effective for their speed. I always think that's why a quad is so much. It's so responsive in terms of those things, because it's just almost as fast as an A, but it's still quite controlled in terms of you've got scullers, so both sides of the boat are symmetrical. So that's why I just like it. I mean, a good quad looks the most attractive rowing boat to me.
Yeah, I would agree on that.
Well,
yeah,
I was never very good in the quad. I'm a middle of an 8 kind of guy.
yeah. I was going to ask you also, if you were to repeat one race when you're 60 or 70, or like a rowing event, what would it be?
It's going to be one you probably haven't heard before. So I won the Doggett's Coat and Badge in 2006.
Not heard of that yet.
It's just that oldest.
It's the oldest annual sporting event in the world. It's run between London Bridge and Cadogan Pier in Chelsea in single sculls, and it's for people who work on the River Thames, who are watermen, who have finished their apprenticeship, and they can do this race. And if you win it, you get the red jacket and the badge and the Doggett's Coat and Badge.
I think I've seen you wear that.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. And like the reason, so when I raced it, I was rowing at the 2006 World Championships in the quad, and the race was set, and I don't get to choose from the races. I have to just turn up and race it in the single scull. And we were training for the quad, and the race was on a Friday, and I was training in the quad for the Worlds that week. And basically the day before I did 16k, half hour rig 20, and then I went to Dorney, rigged up this single, paddled it around Dorney for a bit, then turned up the next day and did this race. So my day off, I moved the whole schedule of the quad to have a day off on Friday so I could do this race in my single. And you row through the middle of London, and the competition was, I mean, I was at the World Championship level competition. People had learned to row for this race, so the competition wasn't everything, but the race is just rowing through the centre of London to win this traditional race that I've been talked about for the last 20 years of my life. It was just an amazing experience, and if I could have one 20-minute row down the course again to experience that again, because it wasn't really a race, it was an experience, but I just loved it, and I would love to do that again. But unfortunately, that time is gone. You can't relive these moments, but that was one of the special moments. I would love to go back in time and live that again. That was great.
That's a unique answer. We've not had that one before.
Yeah,
so what?
And I got in.
You're not allowed to.
It's been running since 1715.
Has it? Yeah. So what? You're not allowed to like row through that course, or the?
No. So just because the centre of London is a busy area. I mean, you would never scull through the centre of London. You have to get up at like 4 a.m. to do it when the boats aren't on it.
Right.
They can't shut the circulation, the river off for you, so you row through the commercial river. But for that race every year, because all the people on the river respect the race, they stop and they let you row through and you do the race properly. But you go through, I mean, the bridges in London, they're towering above it. It's amazing. Like, it's an amazing experience to just do. And it was surreal. I'm rowing through this race thinking, I'm in a race, but the race was done. I won by a mile. And it was really rough, but it wasn't so rough that I couldn't scull okay. So I was fine with it. I'm rowing through the centre of London, I'm going past the Houses of Parliament, just thinking, this is unbelievable. And I'd never been over the course of my single. I'd driven the boats because I used to work on them, the commercial boats, but they're massive. Going over in a single was just a completely different experience. To win this race that meant so much to people that I knew and had such a historical backstory to it and things like that. And I wear my uniform whenever I can. I love it, being part of the Doggett's Coat and Badge winning group. It's a really tight bunch of people who work on the river, but the race itself was just so unique. And I don't even think of it as a race. I just think of it as an experience. But yeah, it was amazing. I'd love to do that again.
That's awesome.
Love that.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask if you could travel back in time to the age you were when you really caught the bug for rowing, what advice would you give that kid?
It would have been 13, and I went to a local race and I won 4 pots in the same day. So I won like J15, J16 in singles. I think I won the J15 and J16 doubles. And I just couldn't believe I'd won a race. It was like one of the first things I'd done. It was a side-by-side race. It was called Dads and Dashes. It's a really small race, 450 meters on a pond, really social, local clubs. You have to stop. The moment you cross the finish line, you have to stop because there's a wall in front of you. Staggered start, it's just one of those traditional races. But I just loved it. I thought this is what it is. This is what rowing is. And if I could go back and say to myself, look, just make, and I did enjoy it, but don't ever take it for granted. Rowing was my pleasure. I love my job. I probably love my job as much as I love rowing, which is lucky. But being an athlete is a very different type of life, and enjoyment. I loved every minute of it, and I just would go back and say, just make sure you don't ever think that this is not a given. You have to earn it, but it is, spectacular. I loved it. People being able to be an athlete, I'm so physically fit. I used to do 3 sessions a day, and then I would play 5-a-side in the evening, with my mates, or I'd go for a run with my mate as a full session. I mean, I can't even go for a run on my own now for like 20 minutes without being out of breath and exhausted. But I'd do 3 full sessions and go and do something else in the evening. Just felt my body was, I was so fit and healthy, and I just thought, I didn't realize at the time how I would never feel like that again.
Yeah.
That was just the pinnacle of my being. So yeah, I regret that now, especially now I've got a son. I would love to be in that shape so I could run around after him, and rather than I pick him up and I'm like, oh, that's heavy. But yeah, just enjoy it, because it was amazing.
Beautiful. Don't take it for granted. I don't think we've had that one before.
Yeah. Never think you deserve it. You earn it every day, but enjoy it while you're doing it, because no one deserves to have that kind of life. But you can do it, and you can earn it, and you can stick with it. But it's not a given. No one should expect that. I think the athletes nowadays, I talk to them like, just don't expect things to come. Like, don't expect GB funding. Don't expect to be selected for things. Do your best. Hopefully you earn it, and you will be. But don't think it's a given that you turn up every day and then you deserve these things. That's not the sport. The sport is you turn up every day, you work hard, and if you can work hard and you can get good enough, you can achieve these things, and they will then come. But it's not, how do I get this? How do I get a medal? How do I get funding? It's like, no, do the sport, enjoy it, love it, do the best you can, and if you're good enough, you might get the opportunity to do those things. But don't think they're part of the package. They're the rewards at the end. The part at the end of the rainbow is that the rainbow is still pretty spectacular.
I think you could translate that lesson into so many other areas of life, and they would just apply perfectly. Don't do something expecting the result. Just do it, and then maybe it will happen, maybe not. But you don't just. Yeah, don't expect it.
That's what makes it exciting. There are no guarantees.
Oh, no. I mean, how many people have you rode with that you thought were going to go all the way? How many surprised you? So people like, Al Sinclair's one of them, right? Because he loved the sport and he just stuck at it. He stuck at it. Ended up going to Olympic Games, and I'm just like, he totally deserves everything he got. I don't, whereas some athletes, and he was a surprise to me, I'm not sure him and John Collins were the people I would have said they would have made it. But other athletes, you go, they didn't make it, but they didn't work as hard as those people. They didn't love it as much. They didn't work as hard. You get in what you put, you get out what you put in. So, but yeah, it's not, you can't always predict it. And that's why these talent ID things, I'm always amazed that people think that's how you can do it. This person will be an Olympic rower on day one. And you're like, no, that's not how it works. It's literally, if you put 20 of them in a room, and you said it's going to be that one, I tell you which one it probably won't be. It'd be that one. 19 other opportunities there. So I never quite figure out how they do that one. I think it's that is a unique part. If someone can do that, they're way more better coach than I am.
Probably more of a psychic than a coach as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Come carry on. Sorry.
I was just going to ask, who are some of your rowing idols and the people that you've looked up to during or post your rowing career? There'll be quite a few, I imagine.
I know. So in terms of athletes, okay, my brother, I just think he's special. Not just because he's my brother. He is special because he's my brother. But as an athlete, I just think he was just amazing. He came last in Sydney. No, sorry, he came last in Athens. And he turned that around to winning a gold medal 4 years later, because he identified that he hadn't done enough to win a gold medal in Athens. And he worked out what he hadn't done. And he changed himself, and he reinvented himself, and then won a gold medal. I'm like, that is just, if you ever get a chance to talk to him, his story is brilliant. How did that?
Did they not literally break down like how much speed they needed to find, like per session, per day, per week?
Yeah. That's exactly. So he spent 2 years rowing, getting the lightweight double up to being competitive, and he did that, and they were just on the edge of the final. Zach came along, who was a superstar. Him and Zach got the double. They won a bronze medal at the World Championships in 2007, and they sat down and went, right, with Darren Whiter, who's an amazing coach. They went, right, how do we win a gold medal from a bronze medal? And they went, right, let's do it right. This is how far you're behind. This is what we think you can row. This is what we think the gold medal should be won in. This is how much you need to make up. Let's divide that by how many sessions we've got this year. This is how many sessions we've got. This is 0.001. Every day we need to find that every session we row. And it was about, let's always try and make sure we do that before we get off the water. And I think that just puts you in the mindset of like, it's a progression. It's not getting a boat, hopefully that boat's a gold medal boat. It's like, let's make it a gold medal boat. We're here. Let's make it what it needs to be. So, Mark's one of my
mind blown.
Yeah, he's amazing. Do you know what? A guy called Nick Strange. Okay, I was a young lightweight at this club, and I came here, and he was cool, and he got rowing. He was amazing. Just being around him, socially. He taught me a lot about just how to conduct myself and what the sport was and how to do things. I thought he was amazing, a great mentor for me. I think probably some legends of the sport like Stephen, Matt and Tim and James, they were around here when we were kids. They were amazing to just watch. But some of the ones I rode a lot with a guy called Dave Curry, who's head coach at Ship League. I rode with him for probably 4 years, on and off in different combinations, did a couple of world championships with him. And I always admired him. And a lot of my career, I thought I was better than him. But I don't think I was. I probably had more natural talent, but he had a better mindset, and he had a better work ethic than I had. And I don't think just because I was probably a bit more natural, that made me better. But at the time I thought that was I thought I was better because I could do those things a little bit better. But he taught me so much about about being an athlete, but because I was around with him, I really could see what I wasn't doing. And I thought that was he didn't teach me by telling me, just being next to him, training with him, taught me what I wasn't doing. And I thought that was a really good, a good part of my career. And I actually moved on a decent amount through that period because of him, because he pushed me. I thought that was good. So they're the kind of athletes that stick out as the ones I rode with, or around. And I thought, there's countless ones. They're all amazing. But in coaching terms, we all start with Jürgen. Snippets that I heard him say. I went to one World Cup coaching, and he was leading that World Cup team, and he took some time to spend with me. Just blown away by his work ethic, his attention to detail. He was coaching the top boat. I was coaching the Annie Joel quad. They were the GB2. I think they came fourth in the World Cup. And they were on 23s at the time, so young kids. They were like an add-on to the team. At the end of the day, when we had our coaches meeting, he talked about my crew more than I did, and what he thought was good and what he thought was bad. And I can't believe he even watched it. I can't believe he even watched the race. Like, why would he? So many other things to worry about. And then the next day, or the day before, I think it was chucking with rain, just like a storm of rain. But racing was continuing, and all the coaches and all the athletes were stuck in this tent, and we were hiding from it. And I just looked out of the tent, and he was in the rain. It was chucking now, and he was there just checking his boat over, and it was howling with rain. I don't think any other coach went outside until it stopped raining, but he did. And he was the guy, he was the man on top, but he did those things. I was like, I always respected that. I thought that was amazing to see that. And I always think, I'm not sure everybody else has the same experience, because I never got coached by him, but I think the bits that I saw was really impressive. Darren White, I worked with him for M23s, and I think he's an amazing coach. Obviously, Robin Williams, we worked with him with the lightweight team a little bit. He's just got a really educated eye and attitude to rowing. I think that's really impressive. So I think I was lucky to work with some amazing coaches, right? The coaches that I will never emulate or be as good as, but actually I don't think that matters, because if I can't be the best writer in the world, but Tolkien come and gave a speech, I still want to listen to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't measure yourselves against other people. You have different experiences and different outcomes and stuff. So, but I always think that if you look up to them, like now, I still do. I still think they're amazing coaches. The fact that they will never coach again, perhaps, or coach things that I know, I'll still hold myself to a standard of going, that's what they did. They were meticulous, they were driven, they were attention to detail orientated. They always managed to find the results where they could get the results, and Jürgen was phenomenal. I mean, I would be probably not far wrong by saying I don't believe another coach will ever achieve what he achieved, because when he came into British rowing, there wasn't British rowing, there wasn't anything established. He kind of built it. What we've got now was built on the back of him, really, about how he established the training model, the program, the facilities and stuff. So so again, lucky enough to work with some amazing coaches, too many to name, but I don't think there's many coaches that I think aren't good at their job. The ones I've worked with are all brilliant. Like Matt Beachy here, Matt Beachy's brilliant, underrated, so underrated as a coach, Matt Beachy, but I think he's really good, but he's not coaching GB every year, and he's not coaching at the Olympics, so people don't think that level, but he could easily do that level. He could easily do it. Yeah.
That's phenomenal answer.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Rossi. This has been an incredible chat. I mean, thank you so much for your honesty. I love your approach. It's so refreshing, and it's also incredible to hear your philosophies and experiences that you've amassed over the years boiled down. into something that I think so many people can learn from. And like, if you're a young athlete and you've been listening to this, and that doesn't want to make you come to Leander, like I don't know what will, because like
definitely come to Leander, yeah. Except just not all at the same time, because
no, but I mean,
spread it out. Yeah.
Just I mean, listening to you talk about rowing has made me want to like go and do some training.
When you go in a boat, you just know it's the sport for you. You sit in that boat and you row, and you go, oh, yeah, this is what it was about. That's why I don't do it anymore. I don't get in a boat, because I just don't think I'll appreciate. I won't be good enough now to do it justice, and I'll stop thinking of it in the way in my head I still picture it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to get in there and be like, oh no, this is not.
Yeah.
I want to leave it. Like that was the in my vision of sport. I'm like the perfection of the sport. I tried to do it, and then now I won't do it disservice by getting in a boat and making it look ugly.
That's incredible. I mean, I think this episode is going to go huge, and like, at some point I'd love to have you on again. I think you bring so much wisdom and knowledge, and just like I said, just refreshing approach to the table. It's been an absolute pleasure to sit down and chat with you
guys. I'm so happy you had me on. I watch all your shows and stuff, and I always think like amazing that you get on the people you do, and I love hearing people's stories, because I know these people. I've never heard those stories. Like you get them out, and I think it's brilliant, and I love you guys trying to make not rowing interesting, but trying to bring it to the masses a bit more, because I think it's the only thing that can grow our sport is to have more communication and more open transparency. Like, people don't need to keep secrets. Give it someone in your training program. What they're going to do with it? They're just going to do the same training. It's not, that's not all of it. That's just part of it.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Amazing. Yeah, no, we really appreciate it. Yeah, and we'd love to have you on again sometime. Maybe next time when you get all 7 of the events.
Oh, mate, it'll never happen again. That day was unbelievable.
No, I bet.
I woke up that day for the final thinking we'll get 1 or 2, I reckon. But the athletes it was race after race after race. It was relentless. I went on the launcher as many as I could, but there was so many of them, some overlaps, and one of them came to the finish line. I got off the launch, I came to congratulate the crew. Then I had to run back to stewards. And as I was running back, I could hear the commentary of the race that was coming down the course, and we got a length down. And I was like, oh no, we're going to lose. And as I run into the last bit of the first bit of the stewards enclosure where the launches are again, they said, and Leanne and our lead coming past the progress ball. So I know that they'd been a length down, they'd come back through and they were a length up, and they were just coming through, and I was just like, I can't believe they're winning this race. And then the next one won, and it was just, I think we doubled up the pair in the 4, and they won the Remenham. So they won the town, the 4, the Hambledon and the Remenham so 6 of them won 2 that day. We won the quad, we won the single with Lola Anderson, and then we won the Wargrave with the development squad. But it was just what a fantastic thing to be. But again, I was part of that. It wasn't people go, I didn't do that, but the athletes did that. Hopefully, put together the structure of it. But they delivered on the day, and all of them delivered on the same day at the same time. I was just thought, what an amazing thing for them to say they did as a group. I look at the pictures now, and I'm like, I don't need to be in them. That was what was winning. I was just there, but the athletes involved. It was it was a special day, like amazing. Like 6 out of the 7 that we can enter, and the 7th they lost by half of them to Imogen Grant and Emily.
So, that's fair enough.
Yeah, so it was Jess Layden and Georgie Bradshaw. They were way down there. They lost by about 3/4 of a length in the final at the end. So half a length or a length of winning all 7. So I'd never happen again.
That's also half a length of being Olympic medalist.
Yeah, it never happened again. But do you know what? I don't hold myself to that standard. Like, how could I? What a ridiculous thing to be thinking that's the level I have to keep doing. Like, I didn't do that myself anyway. They did it. If I have the same athletes at the same level in the same events, maybe they can do something like that. But they don't need to live to that level. I can't make them say that that's what success looks like. Just winning one's successful. Like, why would stick
to the process?
Yeah, God, yeah. Hopefully, yeah. Fingers crossed. This year, Olympic year, we'll see if we can, get a couple of our athletes to get their special moment.
I mean, I'm rooting for a big year for Leander. Yeah.
I mean, well, the men as well. They won 2 that year, so we won 8. We won 8. Yeah, we won 8. So hopefully we'll try and do something similar, because I think the total squad wins is more important than the individual squad wins, because we're a club and I want the men to be successful. So hopefully we can. We might only win 4, but if they win 4, that's still brilliant.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that concludes everything for today's episode. So on that note, easy there.
Cue the music.